Survivor Specialist Phil and Alexa are back with another episode of Winning Survivor. This is our fourth episode in our 10-part series. Today we're talking about Cook Islands, Fiji, China, and Micronesia. Probably my favorite group of winners. We have some of the most underrated winners, possibly some of the most overrated winners. But at the end of the day, that just means that all of them are highly acclaimed by somebody. This is a great group of four winners, as always, for this series. We're joined again by Once Upon an Island. Wes, tell everybody where you are, because last time I kind of did that for you and it was stupid.
That's okay. It's never stupid when somebody else promotes me. It sounds better. I'm Once Upon an Island. I have a YouTube channel here on, as you may have guessed, YouTube. And today, actually, I just dropped the Rob Sesternino story, which has already been a smash hit. Nobody's complained about it that I've noticed, or if they have, I ignored it.
You get complaints?
Oh, all the time. People are like, how could you call Rob a hero? He was clearly a villain. Yeah, for like 4 episodes. Anyways, so yeah, no, Rob Sesternino video is up. So anyone who likes Sesternino, man, go check out the video. It's a big one. So, but yeah, I am ready for tonight. I'm really this. I did a poll, and this section of winners got the most votes in terms of which stretch do people like the most.
This is definitely going to be. I think last week was really good. I think this is one of the strongest, if not the strongest, pair of four that we have, or pair of four.
It's super diverse, which of course everyone loves.
Mm-hmm. Which is very interesting too, because this was when Survivor. So let's think about this. And I know, like, we don't like to get political on this show at all, because that's always just a bad trip for anybody, because you're instantly cutting out half your audience no matter what. But just from a political stance with these seasons, this was when Survivor really pushed diversity. And we see that with Cook Islands, and we see that with Fiji. They pretty much got like yelled at by people that they were not diverse enough on their show, and that a lot of the characters who they were putting on the show were just the crazy stereotype of that character. So they tried to address that. They did it very successfully, sort of, once, and they did it very unsuccessfully, I believe, the second time. However, we do see 2 of our diverse winners here that we haven't had of late. So it's interesting, though, that in seasons 13 and 14, which was 2007 or 2006, somewhere in there, it actually was terribly received. That these, especially, I mean, there's really no arguing it. The breakdown by race is like one of the most egregious things that a reality TV show has ever done. But it's crazy how poorly received that was, and then how poorly received as a season Fiji was. And now we see like a day and age when they're trying to make the casts more diverse, because for a while there, it kind of backed off of that. And it was, let's just get every model that we can. It doesn't matter. Just
That's what the Dark Ages feels like to me, but
yeah. That's really true. But there's kind of a funny might be the wrong word, but good bookend here where Parvati is the last winner we're going to talk about. But in Yul's winning season, in the first season we talk about, Parvati has a great quote early on where she's like, I'm on the white tribe, and I really don't think that's great. Like, even like she up front was like, this doesn't feel good. And I feel like that entire premiere of Cook Islands, everyone's like, this is different. I don't really know what to do here.
Well, and the problem was with the breaking it up by gender and age. Everybody comes in with their own baggage and all that, but also like it's your gender and your age. There's a lot less baggage that is like a lot less historical baggage that is coming with that. And I know that the feminists will probably get mad at me for saying that, but then in terms of like when you look at like you're now broken up, you're the Asian American tribe, and it's like, what? Like, what do you mean we're the Asian? You're the African American tribe. You're the, I forget what Ozzy's tribe was actually broken into, because, like it was.
Is that a Spanish tribe, or is it?
Was it the Hispanic? I forget exactly.
I don't know what terminology they use.
I forget what exact terminology they used. And then there was the white tribe. And like, so you had those 4 tribes. And like, when you actually think about it, it's one thing to be like, I'm the old woman, so I'm going to have to overcome a lot, or I'm the young guy, so I'm going to be looked at as a threat. Yeah. And then you look at like, we're the white tribe. Okay. So like, what do people think of white people before they get out there? What do people think of the African American tribe before they get out there? What do people think of the Asian? And like, it just caused this really terrible, like just complete racial profiling, more so than they even wanted. And especially since at the beginning of the season, it was like the Asian American tribe was all these very serious. We don't like, it was like, Yul was like, I don't want to go out of my comfort zone. Becky was, I don't want. And then you had Cowboy, who was like, I am like out of control. I was in Vietnam. I was doing that. And it's very interesting to see how they broke all that down and how really Yul and Earl, who we're going to be talking about here, really were able to navigate their seasons and what was thrown at them in such a great way. And that's why they're generally considered two of the best winners in the history of the show.
And Yul's has been pretty public, especially because we just saw him again for the second time for the past few months. He was very public saying that he chose to completely alter his personality, for lack of a better term, because he was afraid of misrepresenting his heritage, which is, first of all, just impressive in its own right, because you're out there for 39 days. You can't fake your personality. But I don't think Yul was faking anything. I think Yul just really felt like he had to hold maybe parts of himself in, or maybe hold in certain jokes or certain personality types because he was afraid of misrepresenting or being misrepresented. So I think that also makes his win a lot more impressive, that he was dealing with that difficult baggage the entire season.
Yeah, because you're right. Yul's the first winner to have to directly deal with not only such a diverse cast. I mean, you could really argue that Vecepia, because she brought up a lot in her season, her and Sean, they felt ostracized because they were the only two African Americans in a group full of white people. By the time there was just the two of them, especially. But in this case, it's definitely amplified to like the 10th degree, and everyone is aware of it. Whereas like it felt like Vecepia and Sean were the ones really thinking about it that season, with the way we were shown. But this season, it's like, no, everyone has to have thought about it or is thinking about it. So it's a new thing that no other winners had to like truly navigate a cast where everyone's thinking about how the races are in play here.
Absolutely. And in Fiji, they kind of just did it. Like, it was just, this is our diverse cast. That was probably the worst recruited cast they've ever done. And it's not because it was a diverse cast, obviously. It was just because they just cast people who didn't know Survivor. They just cast people who were like, we want to be on TV. That sounds great. Like, a lot of those people never should have been on our TV in the first place. But like in Cook Islands, a lot of these players were actually like fans. And if they weren't fans, like they wanted to play the game. And we see that because with a lot of the returnees in these seasons, most of them come from Cook Islands. Cook Islands and China, obviously, but Cook Islands had a lot of returnees with Penner, Candace. Both of them have played multiple times. Parvati has played multiple times. Ozzy has played 4 times or whatever it is, 5 times. Yul has played twice. We've seen a lot of people come back. And I think that says a lot about how maybe even though this didn't work at the time, it did give people like maybe an easier into like rooting for certain people, because you had Ozzy, who kind of became like oh my gosh, he just got rid of Brad in that really JP.
Yeah,
he gets rid of JP, and like when he just looks like a Brad. That's the problem. He gets rid of JP, and it's like, oh my god, like I can't believe he just did that. He's throwing challenges, kind of making fun of Billy and all that. And then as he starts going through, it's like, wow, we really like this guy. And Yul and like these like almost like idols started to come from this season. And this was probably like the first season we really saw people like that you could look up to and also be like, I want to be Ozzy. I want to be Yul. I want to be Parvati, which I guess is better to say now than it was after season 13. I want to be Candace because Adam was a hunk. And I want to be Penner because like you had just a lot of really great moments. And I think it just gave a lot of people an easier in, as bad as that is.
I think, and it's kind of crazy that we're talking about season 13, because I feel like this could totally apply to seasons in the 40s. This is one of, if not the most diverse casts ever. There's a way to cast this way without breaking them up via race. So I think what you said, Phil, like you have Ozzy, you have Yul, you have Parvati, you have Penner, you have all of these like cowboy, these amazing personalities. That was going to be there no matter what the theme was. You could have made that heroes, healers, hustlers, and they still would have been awesome.
I'm looking at I didn't know this off the top of my head, but on the wiki it says that Survivor Cook Islands actually has 13 out of 20 contestants come from the state of California, which tells me even though there seems like there is a lot more people, a lot more knowledge maybe this season of Survivor, that it probably was still a heavily recruited cast, even though we don't have exact numbers that I can see here.
Well, in that, it's 100% a very heavily recruited cast because, the problem became...
17
everyone's very good looking, too, which I think is a good tip-off.
Yeah, 17 out of 20 were recruited is what I'm reading, so, yeah.
And I think like even you were saying what 13 out of 20 were from California. Okay. And then Billy Garcia's from New York City. And Rebecca,
we didn't even talk about Billy. Oh my God.
Rebecca's from New York. Like, so it was all cities. This was really when Survivor, because like in season 12, I forget exactly where Cerie's from, but Cerie's not from like a big city. Cerie's not coming from this area where it's I want to be famous. Terry Dietz from Connecticut, like nothing there. Shane's from Massachusetts, but like, you know, it was still spread out a lot. This season was really when it was like, okay, we want to cast these people. We want to cast 5 Asian American, 5 African American, 5 Hispanic American, 5 Caucasian American. That's what our tribes are going to be. So you start looking for that. And then the problem is too, you start looking for who can we get for each of these tribes, but also that like, is one going to play into what we want the theme of the season to be? And 2, like where are we going to find more of like the eccentric personalities for each? The answer to both of those is New York City and Los Angeles. Like that's just a fact. I mean, that's just how it went. And that's why I think you see a lot of this. I mean, you know, look at a lot of the people here are some of your people who are still very vocal on social media, very vocal in their lives. And like, you know, Penner and Yul and Ozzy and all that. That's a very specific person you're looking for. And they were looking for that LA, New York type character here. Not so much like, hey, let's get Keith and Ale from Louisiana and throw him out there on the island.
Totally. But I say, you know, we've talked a lot about the cast. Let's get into Yul's game.
Talk about the winner.
The winner,
I think it is important though to preface Yul's win with all of that, because so much of Yul's game is dependent on this, and this is what we all saw in Winners at War, and I think why we were all so excited to see Yul in Winners at War and the way he played was because we really got to see him with the weight off his shoulders. He just came out there to play. And I think we were all really excited to see the way he did that because he handled himself very differently across the 2 seasons. Sure.
And I mean, though not to get too far ahead, but you could argue that the weight was kind of off his shoulders this season in a way when he has what is now called the Super Idol. At the time, that's just how the Hidden Immunity Idol worked. But at the time, he had the Super Idol. That kept him safe after votes are read. It's like, I feel like we all forget, like, the Hidden Immunity Idol was not just a regular idol like we know now. Like, it was originally a super idol. At least how it was implemented here, and I believe that's how it was in Panama as well.
And it's how it is in Fiji.
No, Fiji, they fix it. I double-checked on that because I thought so, but no, after this season, they fix it, and it's just a regular idol.
Really? Because I thought Earl had that idol too the entire time, but I guess
he did. He did. You're right. He did have the entire time. It just didn't work after the votes were read.
Oh, gotcha.
People give Yul a lot of crap for like winning with that crutch, but I think when you look at, and these are comparing two extremely different players, but when you look at Terry having that idol and you look at Yul having that idol, Yul used that as a bargaining chip, and that's how he ends up getting Penner. And I absolutely, Yul was able to play so much more aggressively because he had that. But I think, I mean, he used it as a threat, but he didn't lose his allies in any way. I think it was kind of like having a 5th member to vote with them.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference, and I think that's why I always hate when people say Ozzy should have beaten Yul. I think it's the best showdown that we've had other than Wendell versus Dom. I mean, because it's as close to a tie as you could have gone. If there was one more juror, they probably vote for Ozzy. And I always hate when it's like, oh, Yul should have lost Ozzy, because that's what I think a lot of this is. We kind of forgot about Yul. We kind of forgot about Earl, because the same thing with Earl, as we'll talk about later, but a lot of people just wanted Yowman to win, and Ozzy was just a better personality. He won all the challenges. Everybody was all about that. But what Yul had to do was so much more impressive, because yes, Ozzy always having immunity makes everything easier, especially when Yul has that idol in his pocket, knowing that if he gets the votes and Becky or Sundra go, whatever, but they still are the I-2-4. They still had to come back from down 8-4. And I mean, everybody, we always ask, like, I always ask, what is the defining moment of this person's win? It's when Yul convinces Penner to come to his side. I mean, without a doubt, 100%. And Terry was never able to do that. Like you said, Alexa, if Terry could have done that, Panama could have been a very, very different season. But Yul was able to do that. And that's why I think he's one of the best winners we've ever had.
And Yul, Yul and Ozzy is almost like, in a way, it's like it's a repeat of what we saw in Borneo, where Richard beat Kelly, but only by that one vote. And Kelly was like, as we forget commonly, it was an immunity beast. Like she was winning immunity challenge after immunity challenge. She would not have gotten to the end without it. And I feel like in a way here, Ozzy doesn't get to the end without his immunity wins. And it goes to prove, though, once again, it's not about winning immunity, which is such like a thing we accept now. Like now we understand that to win Survivor, it's not about winning immunity. But back then, it was such a common misconception. It's like, well, if you're a challenge beast and you're providing for your tribe, why aren't you winning? You should be winning. You should be respected. And Ozzy just once again proves that that's not what winning Survivor is. Winning Survivor is not winning all the challenges. Challenges help. They can hinder, but they don't win you the game. I feel like it's just in a way, it's like repeating Borneo in that sense. Because I can't think of another time where somebody beats a challenge beast in the first 12 seasons besides that one. But correct me if I'm wrong.
And I think you're right. This is the most, that's a good point. This is the closest that a challenge beast ever gets to winning. And we'll talk about Mike, but Mike did not strictly rely on that. Mike had a lot of other moves.
That's way down the line that we're talking about. Just that's
in like a month pretty much. Yeah. But I think for us to see that like Ozzy, who's the best challenge competitor ever, he couldn't even win. If that is your only strategy, that will never win.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people have learned that. And I think that's why the game has shifted so much, where people are always trying to hide how good they are at things rather than provide and show how good they are at things. Now, granted, Ozzy also ran into one of the best of all time. Had Ozzy gone up against Earl, there's a very good chance he beats Earl. Had he gone up against, Aris, he beats Aris. Like he just happened to go up against. But at the same time, when everybody wants to give all this credit to Ozzy doesn't get to the final 3 without Yul either. Like I know Ozzy won 5 immunity challenges, but there were more than 5 immunities up for grabs. You know what I mean? So even though Ozzy wins the majority of them, he still needed Yul to get the numbers back onto his side. Yeah. Otherwise, they lose. Like he gets voted out, much like we see if Terry would have lost at any point, or as we see other challenge beasts do as seasons go on. Keith Nail is another example, which is always crazy, but Keith Nail ran out of people and he goes home at Final 4, and that's what would have happened to Ozzy, which is exactly what happens to him in South Pacific.
No, someone just mentioned in the comments how before the mutiny, Ozzy was the next boot. I think it's just a side note. It's interesting that this is the first season. I think it's the only season where like the mutiny was actually accepted. It comes up. It feels like it first came up in Thailand, but like I think it's the only season where actually anybody accepted the mutiny, which is just crazy to think with how often I feel like it's been offered.
Well, and
and I think it's the only other time it's been offered. I think it's just those 2 times. But I mean, we can talk about the mutiny, but the craziest part is Penner jumping on in the last second. I mean, if it's only Candace who goes through, then that completely changes.
Yeah, and I do believe, though, that Penner switching tribes does get him further in the game, because at that point you're thinking, oh my gosh, now I'm the next person voted off, because Candace and Penner both made the right move. They're outnumbered 4-2. Now this creates one of the best storylines in Survivor history, which is the I-2-4, but they were down 8-4. And the thing was, Penner still never felt included with the other 8 or the other 7 that were over there. So that's why Yul being able to kind of use that relationship he had built with Penner and being like, I understand why you did this, but here's the idol. And now come and work with me, and then we'll go further in the game. I mean, Penner ultimately gets cut in 7th place. I believe he gets 7th.
He gets 7th.
I always forget how many people are on this season because there's like a lot of forgettable characters on Cook Islands. But Penner gets 7th place ultimately. But, he probably goes out in 11th, 10th place if he doesn't jump ship. I know that it's easier to rewrite history because we know that, the I-2-4 win the next 3 challenges after the mutiny, and it's Brad and it's Jenny and it's Rebecca, who I'm sure everybody was really sad to see go. But Penner at the time doesn't know that they're about to win every single challenge. He's got to be thinking they're going to lose.
Yeah.
We keep mentioning these names, but like, it's so hard to this is, there's a lot of forgettable people, but this is a stacked cast with Ozzy, Parvati, Penner, Candace, Cowboy for some people. And
I love Nate Gonzalez. Like, people don't talk about him, but Nate Gonzalez was freaking hilarious.
Yeah. There's a lot of forgettable people, but like this, but just due to returnees, this is a stacked cast considering who comes out of this. I know only Parvati is the only other winner of these returnees, but Candace does well again. Penner does. He gets 7th again in Philippines. He matches what he did here. And Ozzy, what's the furthest Ozzy's gotten since this?
I believe it was with South Pacific. He got fourth place in South Pacific.
He almost won that one if he could have won all the challenges there.
But Sophie Clark got in the way, and we'll talk all about Sophie in two podcasts. But no, I do agree. There's a lot of great ones. And Nate Gonzalez, like you were saying, Alexa, he's forgotten to the community now for the most part because Yul convinced Penner to vote with him. And Nate would have went home that night anyway. But that move just really solidified Yul and Penner as the returnees from this season. Like after Penner showed not only would he mutiny, not only would he do all the crazy stuff he does at the beginning of the game, not only is he a great storyteller, but he also says to Yul, yeah, I'll vote with you to vote out Nate because you just proved this with the idol. It showed that he was willing to play the game. So Penner was always going to be that guy. If Penner doesn't do that, Nate Gonzalez very well could have been on Fans versus Favorites, even getting voted out there because people would have said, oh, he got idled. Let's bring him back because he was very well liked on that season.
He was.
But in terms of Yul, I mean, sticking with Yul, it's hard because so much of this is based around the rest of the cast. But we were just talking about who votes for Yul, who votes for Ozzy. So Parv votes for Ozzy. Out of the final 7, or it's final 8, 4 of the 5 people who are on the jury in the final 8 all vote for Yul. So Candace, Penner, Adam, Sundra all vote for Yul instead of Ozzy. Parvati votes for Ozzy. And then what's interesting is after that, you see Nate vote for Ozzy, which kind of makes sense. They did get along. It just didn't work out. Rebecca votes for Ozzy, even though they were never on the same tribe. I always forget like Rebecca, where she even stood on everything, but they were never on the same tribe. And then you have Jenny and Brad, who started on the same tribe as Yul, and he needed one of their votes, and he doesn't get Jenny's, which always kind of surprises me because I guess she's just voting against Yul at that point because what does she know about Ozzy? Because this was the first time we really saw these people who never actually played with anybody start voting for them to win.
Yeah, Jenny only played with Yul at the beginning, right? And then once they saw they were on separate tribes, they only played together for
6 days.
Yeah.
6 days. It wasn't even 9. Yeah, they only played together for 6 days.
Yeah.
At least this season they held their. I mean, it wasn't much longer, but they started with the 4 tribes that we mentioned in Panama, and after 1 episode they shuffled, and then here after 2 episodes they shuffled. Once again, though, I really wish they had. I mean, you got to realize when they were making the show, they did. Do you think they knew when they were shooting this was going to be like a really people were really going to react the way they did, or because people say
I don't think so. But then, I mean, not to put on a tinfoil hat, but they did put the bottle twist out there. So I think they realized as it was happening.
It's very possible. Maybe there's a lot of comments in the island that made them go, oh, we probably.
I think that's probably what it was. Yeah. I think it's more from the cast than from anybody else. Because you have to remember, too, like, I know that, like, in 2020, we assume the worst in people. Like, that is the thing we do. Yeah. A lot of times people do have the best intentions. They're just not smart. And like that's just a truth. I mean, that's just human nature. And I think that this was one of those instances. The intentions were not bad intentions. No. They just pulled it off in the most tone deaf way. And like the good thing for Survivor is that they did this in 2006 when people actually were forgiving. And like you could kind of rebound from something that was so egregious, where if they would have done this in 2020, we probably are done with Survivor. Let's be completely real.
I just don't think since there was like the biggest social media back then was Friendster and MySpace. It wasn't really there. We didn't have like the Reddit and all these other places, Twitter, whatever, all these echo chambers of people, when you hate someone else agrees with you, you're like, yeah, now I hate them more because you agree with me. Mm-hmm. It wasn't really that back then. It was really just newspapers and word of mouth. And there was the internet, but just not the communities, I guess. So you're right. I think they did this exact same thing today. Would Survivor be canceled? Very.
That is the culture. I mean, we are in cancel culture. So let's be real.
I don't think in 2020 though CBS would even let this happen.
No.
On the flip side.
Well, because if you look at what CBS did, look at a season like Survivor Island of the Idols.
Yeah.
The diversity is there. It's there. It's not to this level. It's not 15 of the 20 castaways are not white, but the diversity is there. Like there's a bigger percentage, but they're not saying, okay, and now for the black tribe. Like they're not doing things like that anymore, thankfully.
But I think that was partially, and this is not to get too much in the weeds, they did switch casting directors after Edge of Extinction. So Jeff and whoever else is the new casting people actually cast Island of the Idols. So that was the first season without. Was it Lynn Spillman?
Lynn Spillman, yeah.
Lynn Spillman, yeah. As I'm sure you know better than I do. So that could be part of it. It could be part of why they got rid of Lynn Spillman was to just I don't know all the details, but you're right. And Island of the Idols, I'm going to go through and count now and see how many people weren't white, because I am very curious, because I thought about that too when when I watched Island of the Idols. I'm like, this is more diverse than it's been recently. But back then, this is probably why they recruited Cook Islands of Fiji so much, was to purposely diversify. They had to find the people they were looking for. I'm sure there's certain people. Archetypes.
And we've talked about this kind of with Davey. I mean, Davey was on our podcast and he said, like, it's hard to find like other Black people who watch Survivor, and he always talks about the blurred, and like he's in that and he wants to represent that and get other people to be interested in that. And I think that was a problem. And I mean, that was also, early 2000s. I mean, CBS's audience for the most part is very white. I mean, and it still is. I mean, that's the other reason why it's like, you got to push back and forth on this. But at the same time, like the audience was very predominantly white for Survivor. And so the people who were applying wanted to be Terry. They weren't going out there and saying, I want to be Jervis. They wanted to be Terry. And then all of a sudden you get Sari and you're like, all right, now like I want to be Sari. That would be great. But they never found another Sari. They never even came close.
Yeah. And that brings up a good point, Phil. Like we're analyzing all these new casts and they're always asked, oh, which Survivor do you strive to be like? It's no coincidence that Sari and Yul are constantly brought up. That's not a coincidence. So I think you're right, Phil. Like you obviously can't force another Sari, but if you create that opportunity more, there will be more Saris. There will be more.
Yeah. And I will say on my channel, if you sort my videos by like most popular, because I do this sometimes just to see like in terms of the story videos, like the people who get the most views of stories, and this is not to the race, this is more to the gender, but all the male stories I made have easily swept all the female stories. And it's just like, you always wonder, like, everyone's like, why are the men or why do the men get more airtime and stuff? I mean, and it's possible because they get more airtime, they get more views, but like the views on my videos show me that the men get more views than the women. And it's just like, so I wonder if it's the same with race. I haven't really gotten that at all.
We're about to talk about that here, though. If we were to rank these 4 winners, everybody puts Parvati at number 1 in this group of 4. I disagree, and I will always disagree. Todd Herzog is a million times better player than Parvati, and I don't care what anybody says, because of this first time. I'm not saying Parvati played bad, but Parvati is not. This is very much the Amber thing, where like we needed another really cute. She's going to kind of stir things up, and she got her second chance and was like, all right, now I got wings. I'm going to play this game. So the first time she plays, she's not on Sari's level. She's not on Amanda Kimmel's level. Like, she's just flat out not.
No,
and then
first time, definitely not.
No, and then she learns it. So I don't think she's the best player here. But if you really think about it, it's Parvati and Todd, and then Yul and Earl are forgotten. When people say, who should have been on Winners at War? It's always, where's Todd? Where's Todd? Where's Todd? Nobody really says, where's Earl? So it's something to think about as we move forward. But even with Parvati, if Parvati only plays in Cook Islands, nobody was talking about Parvati in Cook Islands. I hate to break it to everybody, but nobody really cared.
Not to get too far off topic, but I wrote this down as a fun fact. Exile Island that they used for Cook Islands is actually called Nude Island by the locals.
Ooh.
Because of the lack of vegetation, not because of anything else, unfortunately.
Of course. That's what I thought.
As it is.
That was a fun fact.
Could you imagine if not only did they break the tribes down by race, but then if you got sent to Exile Island, you had to walk around naked, and they were just like, all right, now we are only going to send women to Exile Island, because that's very early 2000s Survivor.
It'd be like a test ride for Naked and Afraid, I guess.
But so let's sum up Yul here in like 2-3 minutes, just because we're almost at a half hour. And I know we've really talked more about the cast than Yul, but I also don't think that that's really the wrong way to approach this, considering when Yul talks about his win, he pretty much talks about the cast more than himself. And we all know the story of the I-2-4 so well. We know what became of all of them. But Yul's game, how would you sum it up, Wes? Like, if you just had to say, this is what Yul's game is, what would you say it was?
You know what? Yul did not win. If Yul's the first male to not win individual immunity, I would say Yul is the perfect subject. Yul versus Ozzy is like the perfect showdown of social versus everything else. Like, we keep forgetting the social is the most important thing. That's what wins you the game. There's no such thing as a jury who got it wrong. You have to play your season according to your jury. What does your jury respect about? What does your jury want? Because what your jury wants is what's going to win the game. So you need to figure that out. I know we said this previously. There's only 2 goals as Survivor, get to the end, and number 2 is make the jury want to vote for you. And I know I feel like when we get to Todd, that's like the most beautiful example of understanding number 2. But here, Yul understood number 2 better than Ozzy. So Ozzy didn't get robbed. Ozzy just didn't understand what his jury wanted and he didn't accomplish it. And it's unfortunate because he was very close. We say in South Pacific he would have won. But would he have? I mean, would they have respected Ozzy more? I don't know.
The only reason he wins is because Savai was the whole entire jury. That's the only reason he would have won the game, because they all would have voted.
We say that, but Ozzy's kind of the reason that. I mean, I know Cochran flipped, but Ozzy is the reason that we saw Cochran flip. So
what I also think is fascinating though about this matchup is Yul's not even that great of a social player. Yul's a strategist, and he does have a good social game. Yes. But we saw that on this season. He's not a great social player. Like, he's very awkward. He's a little timid. He still has game, but he's not on levels of like Tommy. I really believe Tommy's one of the better social winners we've ever had. And like, when you look at the way Tommy played compared to the way Yul played, it's not the same thing. But it also shows, like, think about in all of the follow-up times they played between Yul and Ozzy. When Yul gets voted out in Winners at War, the audience is devastated. The 3 people sitting around him are devastated. Essentially, Jeff Probst is devastated.
Got rid of him are devastated.
Yeah. When Ozzy got voted out every time, it was because they were like, we really don't like him that much. Like, let's get rid of him. Yeah. It happens in South Pacific, maybe an exception, but then again, Cochran was pretty much our narrator from Savai, and he hated Ozzy. So
yeah.
Ozzy is, you see this in Cook Islands, so he's very cocky. Very, very cocky.
But with Yul though, like, we say his strategy's so great, but like, you can have the best strategy in the world, but if no one's gonna listen to you and do your strategy, it's because you have a terrible social game. Yul's social game may not be the best, but it was good enough for his strategy to work, for people to listen to strategy and for a strategy to happen. Because Yul's not out there idling out people and negating 9 votes against himself. He couldn't. He had 1 idle, and I think he got voted for twice, two separate times. It was actually episode 11. I noticed that I kind of forgot, but Yul received 4 votes against him. Episode 11.
That was the Nate vote.
Yeah, that was the Nate vote. Yeah.
That was because they all realized that he was the biggest threat.
And he was almost gone. He had the idol, but.
And Penner, didn't Yul kind of threaten Penner? Was the threat to Penner to say, if you work with me, I'm showing you the idol right now, and either you're going to work with me and we're going to vote out Nate, or we're going to vote you out tonight because they're going to put the votes on me and I'm going to play this. I think that's pretty much how it went down. I won't lie. I didn't rewatch Cook Islands. I was too focused on Fiji because I didn't remember shit from Fiji. So, I forget exactly how it went, but I'm pretty sure it was something along those lines. And so Yul gets the votes, but knowing that, like, he just wanted to get through that vote with his idol, because getting through at final 9 was the key to his game. Because remember, they were down 8-4, and this is an epic comeback. But in reality, by the time the merge hit, it was 5-4. They only need to get through 1 more vote, and it was clear sailing for the I-2-4.
And people forget that Russell wasn't the first one to overcome an 8-4 advantage. It was Yul.
He was not. He was not. Hey, Falcons fans, where are you at?
Falcons fans.
Real quick, does Yul win again in season 40 or 41?
If Yul comes back a 3rd time, does Yul win? I feel like Yul has a good chance. I don't feel like he didn't annoy a lot of people this last time he played. He came across as very respectable. I guess he played himself, is what we were showing on TV. I think Yul himself could win again.
I think Yul could win too. I don't think his strategy could win anymore though, because there's no more super idols and somebody as threatening as Yul. People saw that he was as big of a threat as he was. And that's what makes it tough. And he showed people how much of a threat he was in Winners at War, which is partially why he went on. Now, we also know that it had a lot to do with pregame alliances and things, but he did show people, like, I want to know what's going to happen with these fire tokens. And that starts to scare people when they're like, okay, we can't think like you. Stop that.
Yeah. We're not as smart as you need to go.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to mention one thing before we move on to Earl, is that I remember Cowboy was the first one, I think, at least that we're ever shown on the show, where somebody presented like a vote split. Of course, it wasn't really needed before Guatemala, I guess. But a vote split, and it's like, Yul technically was like safe until the end, but like if everyone had gotten their crap together, they could have vote split him, made him burn his idol, and then he would have been vulnerable. Because there was only one. They didn't like. They were not going to re-hide the idol this season. I don't think.
No, they wouldn't have. It was too hard though. They couldn't. They actually couldn't split the votes because, like I said, by the time they actually had a chance to vote out Yul, there was 9 people left in the game. That's when they actually merge. Yeah. And so what happens is if that group of 5 splits their votes, Yul knows that his 4 is solid. So there was really no way they could pull it off. But Penner saved his own skin for the sake of everybody else. It got him 2 spots further in the game. Probably worth it because it also got him back on the show 2 more times. So
yeah.
All right, let's move on to Earl Cole since we talked about Yul, and that's fresh in everybody's mind. We're going to talk about the man who has only played once. Criminal, he's only played once. Pretty unreal that he's only played once.
He's been asked back 5 separate times,
and he never wants to play.
Nope.
I think he wants to, but I think the timing's always really off. I think he said, I don't know where I read this, but I think he just got a new job, and then another time he and his wife had a very premature baby, like right around, I think, when he was called for Game Changers, if I'm getting this quasi correct. So I think he's around and I think he wants it. I think the timing has just always been off.
He's been invited back for Micronesia, which, by the way, I think he would have, even if he said yes, they would have changed that because it wasn't an All-Stars like they originally planned. So he was really invited for Heroes versus Villains, Blood versus Water, Game Changers, and Winners of War, and all of which he declined due to work obligations. It's what it says in the wiki. Though I remember hearing him on Rob Has podcast saying if they were shot again in like October, November, that time frame again, then he would play.
Season 41, Earl Cole going to be leading a team.
He's open to playing. It just needs, as you said, Alexa, the right time.
Well, and the problem is too, like you said, he was never going to play on Micronesia. Let's be real. Earl was never going to be one of the top 5 heroes. The problem with the Heroes tribe for Heroes versus Villains is that none of the men were replaceable. Those really were like the 5 most iconic heroes, unless you put Ozzy in. So, like, if you're going to pull Tom Westman, you're going to put Ozzy in. But there's no way you weren't going to have James. There's no way you weren't going to have Colby. You go right down that line. Rupert, are you kidding me? Like, how can you not have Rupert? And then, you have Tom Westman and why am I drawing a blank? Oh, and JT. There was no way you weren't going to have those 5 guys. So Earl was never going to break into that. Blood versus Water, maybe Game Changers, anybody could have played. Winners at War would have been great to see him. But Earl really is. He's become so kind of forgotten because of how bad his season is. And I don't care that in our Patreon trivia game, Celestina Hendrickson said that it was her favorite season. I don't care. Fiji is bad. And the thing is with this season is because it's bad, I think Earl gets overlooked because he sat in the final 3 against Cassandra and Dreams and wiped the floor with both of them.
Yeah, he's the first person to get all the votes at Final Tribal. We cannot ignore that. I don't think anyone else sweep the. I don't think anyone else ever sweeps before Earl.
No, Earl is the first person to sweep.
Yeah, and he only received 1 vote along the way. He almost had the perfect game. He was so close.
So close. And what was it? A throwaway vote? But it wasn't shown on TV. I know that.
It was Rita Vereros, and I'm looking up right now to see when she voted for him.
It was episode 3. Jeff actually at the reunion totally forgot that Rita voted for him, probably because, as you said, it wasn't even. I don't think it was shown on TV. So it was almost like he played the perfect game, but technically he didn't. But so close. And also, if we forgot to mention, Yul, first Asian American winner, and Earl, the first African American male winner. So we back to back, very diverse on our winners.
Yeah. And it was, I'm looking at it now, Rita voted for Earl because she didn't want to vote for Sylvia, and voting for Anthony would have only caused a tie. So that's why she ended up voting for Earl. So it was just kind of a throwaway. It was a 4-3-1 split vote. She just got a vote. He just got a vote there. But like when you look at Earl's game too, he only had, I guess he had the idol for 3 episodes, I believe. But then when you look at his game with Yao-Man, they start on that have-nots tribe, which is obviously the stupidest thing that's ever happened. The have-nots.
I'm breaking people up by race.
Yeah, it's so dumb. And I mean, they lose the first 3 challenges, and then, they lose, what is it? They lose 4 out of the first 5, and then Gary quits because of health reasons. So really, they're only down, I think they're actually only down 1 person going into the switch, because when Jessica goes home, Sylvia joins the tribe, so it's 8-8 again, or 9-9 again. And then Erica goes, Sylvia goes, Gary, Liliana go, and then Rita goes. And then, so they're only down 1 when the tribe switch happens, which makes no sense. But they lose 4 of the 5 immunity challenges in that span.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I think with Earl, and I candidly haven't watched Fiji in a while, so you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like when we talked about Aris and as we're talking about Earl, and at least for me, when we talk about Todd, we're talking about like winners that are managing some big time characters. And I didn't really consider that until someone just said in the chat, how many zeros are in a million? You're dealing with Lacey, you're dealing with Rocky, you're dealing with Dreams, you're dealing with the 4 Horsemen, which lasted like a hot 6 hours. Like there are a lot of very, very different personalities and very, very different groups. And Earl being super even keeled, I think is really what helps propel him.
I absolutely agree. And I just think part of the reason why Earl's game isn't talked about more is also because of his alliance with Yao Man, and because Yao Man was the fan favorite by far in a season that didn't have many to choose from to be fan favorite. Like, let's just be real. And so Yao Man's the only person from the season to play twice. And so Yao Man comes back and everybody wanted him to win. He gave up the car. Dream still cuts him off at the end anyway. People just weren't rooting for Earl. They were rooting for Yao Man. And it made it so that, like, as an audience, you weren't paying as much attention to Earl's game the first time you're watching it because you're just paying attention to Yao Man's game.
People are mentioning in the chat, I guess we should mention this. So originally this was supposed to be divided up, I think the same way as Cook Islands this season.
Yes.
But because Melissa McNulty dropped, I think the day before due to an illness, they only had 19 people, so they just cut it into 2 tribes. So technically, unless they burned them, somewhere out there in the world, there are buffs for the 2 tribes that never happened. Kind of like Palau, because in Palau they had the merge. The merge tribe never happened. So those buffs, now those though they did sell on CBS, but I don't think they sold the 2 Fiji buffs that would have existed otherwise.
Well,
kind of out there somewhere.
That also answers your question though, because you had both said, well, like, how did they feel about what they did in Cook Islands and the bad backlash and everything? They were about to do the same breakdown.
It's a good thing
the next season.
Couldn't have been. Yeah, that's a really good point.
We should thank Melissa McNulty. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa McNulty. You
I'm sure she listens to all the Survivor podcasts and hasn't regretted this for the last, 15 years of her life.
She literally saved Survivor, so Jeff should give her money.
You should. Because I'm trying to think now, when you think about it that way, Gary, Rocky, Boo, and I guess Alex, and then Melissa McNulty would have been the 5 on the White tribe. It's crazy that they were going to do it back-to-back season.
Were all the other 4 white people all in the same tribe to begin with? Did they actually? So since we basically know that there were supposed to be 5 of each, like in Cook Islands, in terms of race, were they cut up like? I'm trying to remember. Was it like
No, it wasn't. It wasn't broken up. They mixed them because Earl started on a different tribe than Cassandra and Dreams, and so it was different. But I mean, hey, that's a good point if that was supposed to be the case. But you look at what happens with Earl here. So Earl, Yao Man, Mookie, and Michelle, all 4 of them start on Ravu. They're the only ones to make the merge, and we all know what actually ends up happening with Michelle, who makes the merge and then gets voted off from her own tribe because they decide to split them back into 2 tribes immediately. So really only 3 people from that tribe make the merge in the sense of like what we're used to being a merge out of a group of 9. So kind of similar to what we saw earlier in Cook Islands. It was 4 out of 9. This is 3 out of 9. And on top of that, Mookie's not friends with them. Mookie doesn't like them at all, and Earl kind of teamed up with Cassandra and Boo, and he was able to kind of make things work. But it's funny how these starting tribes don't really matter as much now as they do in the earlier seasons. We finally have started to see this shift of whoever you started with. Sure, you need at least 1 or 2 good people there, but it doesn't really matter all that much.
Mm-hmm.
Where people are mentioning in the chat, I guess we should also mention Earl had never watched Survivor before playing. And was cast 2 days before the season started. He was cast. He actually originally applied for Amazing Race. And
he was an applicant? Okay.
Yeah, so did Parvati. Parvati actually originally applied for Amazing Race as well. And to go even further back, because I just listened to a podcast with Heidi Strobel from Amazon, she also applied for Amazing Race. So apparently Amazing Race is getting all these gold all this gold that's getting denied and being moved to Survivor, which I find surprising.
I'm really curious. Do people apply for Survivor and end up on The Amazing Race? And if so, who are they?
No,
Yeah, I wonder.
I don't think they do because Survivor is such a personality show, whereas the other shows, if you're a bad personality, it doesn't really matter.
So I on The Amazing Race with a bad personality, right?
Yeah, they can hide you easily on The Amazing Race with a bad personality. I mean, look, Whitney and Keith got cast for Amazing Race after playing Survivor.
Oh, why would you say that? Oh,
I know, it's insane.
Legit, Survivor pair, I forget are on Amazing Race every time. Every time.
I forgot they were on Survivor.
Oh, Alexa.
We're talking way too much about South Pacific tonight. It's making me sick to my stomach. But yeah, so when we look at how Earl had to navigate, like he didn't really have to navigate too much in the early game, but his tribe he started on the wrong tribe. He really did. And then when he was able to swap, when they did do the tribe swap, his tribe was very good after the swap. They won all 3 of the challenges leading into the merge because he swaps to the halves. And it was the stupidest twist in the history because if you actually look at it, this is where everybody always talks about it. Even though they lost 4 of the first 5 challenges as the have-nots, the have-nots that then swap lose the next 3 immunity challenges. So you literally just lose 7 of 8 immunity challenges. Do you think it was an unfair advantage? Let's think about that.
That's so demoralizing.
Yeah, because really Moto only lost back-to-back people because Gary quit. If Gary didn't quit due to illness,
Liliana's the only one to go.
Yeah, but it's a question like, Earl doesn't go, but because the butterfly effect, does Earl go because if Gary doesn't quit? You don't know. You don't know how things play out. If Moto only goes that one tribal and the other tribe just keeps going and going, how that just really wears mentally on you.
Well, and especially since Gary, out of everybody on this cast, was the only one who applied. So who knows if he actually doesn't get ill? How does Gary do? Does he play well on the season and actually be better than Earl? We don't know. We'll never know, but that's how it is.
Let's see what other fun facts I have for Earl. Oh, not much.
Yeah. Well, no, because Earl, again, forgotten. Just like pretty much forgotten. But he played such a good game. And this was one of the first times, too, that we saw somebody take goats with them, but also want to be working with those goats. Like he liked Cassandra and he wanted to play the game with Cassandra, despite the fact that Cassandra was going to be a goat the entire time. It wasn't like he was Boston Rob with Philip and being like, come on, buddy, we're going to the end. He liked her. And he had one of the best final tribal council performances, which is always easier. It's easy to have your best game of the season when you play Savannah State, as opposed to like playing Alabama. But that's kind of what happened is he sat down next to Dreams and he sat down next to Cassandra and he told the jury, like, I couldn't beat Yao Man. There was no way. And I had to work with him the entire time. And Yao Man has the great idol play and Yao Man plays the flashy game. And Yao Man gets the robbed spot that Rob Cesternino, Kathy Vavrick O'Brien, Terry, all those people get. But Earl knew that he needed to get rid of him. And it's exactly what Adam talks about when he talks about managing your threat level. Yao Man was such a big threat. Yao Man is David Wright. Nobody expects it. He comes out, he blows your door, like the doors off you. Does the better player win? Probably, because they knew to manage their threat level better than that guy.
I wonder, thought experiment, does Yao Man beat Earl? Like for Earl. Earl clean sweep. He didn't clean sweep like, oh, well, he's the only one, like Earl wasn't bad. Earl was good. So does Yao Man beat Earl? Is it like a 5-4 vote? Who votes for Earl over Yao Man?
And they were a part of the same alliance too. So it's like that group gets broken up probably. I don't know. That's a really good question.
I think Yao Man probably wins just because he played the flashier game. And when you're talking about people who don't understand Survivor, they're going to look at like, well, he played an idol. What did you do, Earl? They're never going to like give the credit for something else other than, what you're doing with the idol. So yeah, I mean, I think Yao Man probably wins. I do think Earl gets the clean sweep because he's sitting against possibly, arguably, the 2 worst finalists. I mean, they really are bad. I mean, Dreams had no chance. Dreams, I think, played a great game for Dreams. Dreams was out there. That was a learning experience for him. That was a growth process for him. Like, he went through such a world out there. And he played a fun-to-watch game. But he played the sugar game.
Dreams. I know. I know it's like maybe
game,
And the thing with Dreams was he got discriminated against like because he was homeless. Like the whole situation was really bad. But what I loved about Dreams is that he played like a human. And yes, it's not a good game, but it's a relatable game. So I loved him.
Yeah, he's an incredible character. There's no denying that Dreams. But like I just said, like, yeah, he played the sugar game. He really did, because he played to be dramatic. He played in his own mind. He was sporadic. It was not well thought out. And Earl went out there and really, like, this is the wrong thing to say because their personalities are nowhere near similar, but he played very similar to Brian Heidig, where it was, I'm going to come out here and I'm just going to play you're a pawn in my game, and I'm going to do whatever I have to do to win. I'm not going to try to be entertaining. I'm not going to try to do anything flashy. I'm going to come out here and I'm going to get the votes I need to win this game. And I want to get the $1 million because 2 days ago, I didn't think I was coming out here to play. And then they asked me and I said, sure. Why not? How hard can it be? Especially if you're asking me 2 days before who you got out here. So I don't know. I think Earl definitely, he earns this win. And it's a shame that when you look at it, I would probably predict that every single person would put Earl as the fourth best winner in this bunch. And he probably is, but he's not that much further below them. Like, when people are looking at this list, if they're not a diehard Survivor fan, they probably don't know who Earl is when they look at our cover photo.
Right.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that Earl is the least impressive. I know we're not ranking winners, but I wouldn't say he's the least impressive winner out of the 38 winners we had. Like, it's not like, I don't know. If I was to make a list of most impressive, I wouldn't put Earl 38th.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. So just because he's against, some greats here with Yul, Todd, and Parvati, he's probably the weaker of the four, but it doesn't mean that he's weak in general.
He could be the fourth best winner and still be the fourth best in that group. Like, I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
First best winner, 38th best winner, it all pays $1 million.
It all pays $1 million.
Except Tony.
Sometimes too.
Yeah. And the good thing for Earl was he was smart enough to win it back in 2007 when it was actually worth something rather than, inflation, everybody. Why is that prize not $2 million since like 2010? Come on, Survivor. Come on.
And by the way, Big Brother only pays $500,000. I'm like, what's the point? That's three.
Well, that's what Amazing Race does, because they pay each person $500,000, and it's crazy.
Yeah, but if you're married to them, it's really. But yeah,
that's true. That's true. Hey, we don't need to get into
Amazing Race. Hey, not to get too far into this, Amazing Race takes 3 weeks to play. Big Brother takes 3 months. I feel like the 3 weeks I can live with.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Well, all the Big Brother people end up getting like huge followings after, so they probably get plenty more money after the.
Yeah, you're probably right.
But yeah, it's always hard too, because when you look at Yul, you sit here and you say, wow, he beat Parvati, he beat Penner, he beat Ozzy, he beat, even Candace, he beat all these good players. When you look at Earl, you really look at this, and after Yowman, this is everybody who made the merge. It's Boo, Stacy, Alex, Mookie, Edgardo, Michelle. Just not highly regarded at all. Like, none of them were even considered to play another season of Survivor. And that's what makes it so difficult to really, Earl's kind of in that Kim Spradlin realm where it's like, is he as good as what we saw? Or was it because of who he was playing against? That's what
is it just because he's so good he made them look,
No, they were all bad players.
Trying to make Earl look better here, okay? It's my only goal.
I know. No, I hear you. And I think Earl is probably I don't think Earl will ever play again. I don't think it's going to happen. But, I think that only helps his legacy. I think him and Chris Doherty will never play again. And they're always going to be considered two of the best winners, because it's always going to be what would happen if they would have played against some of these icons. We don't know. We really don't know. Could this game win again?
I think so. I think it's simple. I mean, we used Adam as an example. Like, it's a bit of managing your threat level. It probably wasn't as concerted of an effort as what Adam did, but I think being like the number 2 best player, the number 2 flashiest player, I think that's a winning strategy.
Yeah. It's almost, I mean, we've just saw, you mentioned earlier, Phil, how Dreams and Cassandra were goats, and Brian Heidig is the first person to successfully pull off the GOAT strategy. But the GOAT strategy is a strategy that still works today. If you can get GOATs to the end, I mean, it's a strategy that I think is like it's a timeless strategy. Like, you can work in any season if only you can figure out how to get them to the end with you.
Yeah, so, that's absolutely true. And Earl did, and Earl didn't even have to backstab anybody in order to get the GOATs to the end, because he always had the numbers. He really did.
Now that might be the harder part. I feel like to pull off. I feel like how often does the person who wins always have the numbers? It's not as often, at least in my opinion. But I could be wrong. Did Tommy always have the numbers?
Pretty much. I mean, it depends on how you look at it.
Yeah, Tony seemed like he always had the numbers, but that was because of a lot of work he was doing. It wasn't like the numbers fell naturally into his lap. So
yeah, one thing we probably either should have or now should start to track was the winner a part of the majority alliance, or was that winner an underdog? I'm
chat. That's up to you, chat. Make a document.
Yeah, not us. You guys do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's tough with Earl because he was part of the majority alliance, but for a second he wasn't because of the 4 horsemen who thought they were the 5 horsemen, and then they weren't the 5 horsemen, and Earl completely blindsides Edgardo, and it's absolutely phenomenal. So it's tough to figure it out, but for the most part, he had the majority. What was his confessional count? Do you have that up, Wes?
No, actually, great point. I had that up last week. I will pull that because Yul's is also super interesting. So let's talk about something else while I'm looking up.
Yeah, well, once you're about to do that, we're gonna have to go over here to Todd.
It's just loading right now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so let me circle back to Cook Islands real quick, and then we'll talk about Fiji's confessional count, because this is important. I feel like in terms of how people view winners, like how many confessionals you get, I feel like affects whether you're telling are you the narrator of your story, are you the narrator of the season? Because narrators of the season typically get viewed as more dominant winners. So Yul, I know I said it last week, maybe you don't remember. How many confessionals do you think Yul got?
It was like 47 or something like that, right?
It's 45, yeah, and Ozzy got 46. Technically, Penner had the most confessionals that season with 49. Yeah, well, he's a storyteller. It's all about Survivor's a story. And then in Fiji, how many do you think Earl got?
God, he was probably like 55-ish. Alexa, you got a guess there? You look like you're thinking.
I would say lower. I would say 50 flat.
He had 59. Yeah, it was earlier seasons. It seemed like people were always getting double digits in the finale, but with Yul and Earl, there was no double-digit confessionals in their seasons for anybody. And Earl had the most confessionals of the season, followed by Alex, who had 52.
How many did Yao have?
Yao had 46.
That's interesting, and I think a lot of that might have to do with the language barrier there, because Yao Man was everybody's favorite on that season, and I'm fascinated that he didn't have the most confessionals, because even when he came into fans versus favorites, the reason he gets voted out so early is because everybody loved Yao Man, and everybody knew that Yao Man would win the game if he got far enough. So I always thought that he was our storyteller for that season, but I guess he really was, because he was a part of every big moment, but they weren't going to give him narrator confessionals because it's like Earl's just got a way better voice for narrating. That's just a fact.
Yeah. Earl could do voiceovers if he really wanted to.
He's got a beautiful voice.
Yes.
He really does. He really
serenade us.
Well, let's jump over to Todd, who I really believe is the best one-time winner in the history of the show. And I say that all the time. China's my favorite season. Todd goes in. He goes up against Courtney and Amanda. It's the most impressive final 3 in the history of the show. He wins it 4-2-1. Close one. Still pulls it out, though, which is really all that matters. The shocking part in that one is always the fact that Courtney gets more votes than Amanda and very nearly pulls off the upset, despite the fact that she really didn't want to play. But Todd, another one, much like Earl, almost like Yul, who we all wanted to see play for a very long time, who hasn't been able to play for health reasons and things like that. But then when it seems like he's about to come back, he still didn't come back for Winners at War, even though it seemed like he'd been cleared. But this, to me, is just, it's the most impressive game. And it's the fact that, he came out in a time where he was, labeled as the gay Mormon flight attendant. That's all he was. And he came out and he pulled together like a ragtag team to just take down the big, strong people. And it's amazing. I think it's just the best. It's the best game. Yeah,
I agree that he's the best winner of these 4, but I agree that he has the best final tribal council out of the 4 by a long
shot. Final tribal council ever.
Yeah.
He has a top 5 at the very end.
Easily in History Survivor. Yeah, easily top 5. And I feel like I'd have to rewatch every Winner's Final Tribal to figure out if he is the best, because he's very possibly.
And that's the thing, though. Earl's was so good that I could almost say Earl's was better than Todd's, but Todd had to this is what I was saying. Earl had his good game against the worst team, whereas Todd could have easily lost. He could have easily lost Survivor China, and we'd still be sitting here talking about Courtney or Amanda as one of the best winners that the show's had. Like, we would be talking about it that way just because that's how good all three of them played the game in this season.
And with him, I mean, with it being a ragtag group, it's kind of like what we were just talking about with a bit with Earl and a lot with Aris last week. And what's great about Todd is he has his ragtag group, but he can divide them in different ways because he takes down Jean Robert, takes down James, all in completely different ways. And it's really, it's him and Amanda kind of together. And Amanda's, as you're watching it, you don't really see her as the number 2. And then you watch the final tribal and you're like, oh yeah, Todd did all of that.
I mean, just Todd does what I keep saying. There's only 2 things you have to do in Survivor. One is get to the end, which a lot of people do. Number 2 is make the jury want to vote for you. And even if Todd didn't play the best 38 days, it was that 39th day where he sealed the deal and he made the jury want to vote for him. So, and it was everyone talks about Amanda Blue final tribal. I don't think even if Amanda pulled out her best final tribal here, that Todd doesn't beat her because Todd does so well. And of course, his social game up to that point had to back up what he does here at the end. Because if he had if he rustled his way to the end and then tried to have an amazing final tribal council, it would have worked. But it was a combination of everything. But we're just so impressed by what he does here. And Amanda looks so poor comparison. And because we've had terrible people at Final Tribal before. It's just that Amanda looks so bad next to Todd, who looks so amazing.
And this was almost the first instance we had where what we were talking about with Sarah Lucina in our tell-all, which was she was saying if it was her and Tony and Michelle, her and Tony would split those votes and Michelle's numbers could go up because, you're splitting there. And that was kind of the instance we saw here. Everybody thought it was between Todd and Amanda. The problem was Todd and Amanda were vying for the same votes. They were vying for PG's vote. They were vying for Eric's vote. They were vying for Jean Robert and Jamie's vote. Now, nobody knew that Frosty was going to vote for Todd. A lot of people thought Frosty was going to vote for Courtney, which if she would have worked it a little bit harder, maybe she could have gotten Frosty's vote. But what's interesting is this ends 4-2-1. Throw Frosty out for a second. If Amanda's able to swing some people to her side, all of a sudden it's 2-2-2 and we have 1 vote left. Like, this was so close to being that situation where Frosty was casting the deciding vote, but Amanda just could not perform up to Todd's level. Now, when you look at who voted for Courtney, Denise and James were going to vote for Courtney no matter what, because James hated them all and Denise hated them all. So they were going to vote for Courtney pretty much no matter what. And also James just found it hilarious that Courtney pretty much told Jean Robert to shove it.
And he takes it.
He takes it because he didn't have a choice. He obviously then votes for Todd to be like, ha ha, I'm better than you. But it's very interesting because we talk about how great Todd's game was and how bad Amanda's final tribal is. Amanda's final tribal is just, it really impacts the game on so many levels because all those votes that should have been hers go to Todd. Had she been able to pull 1 or 2, we could be sitting there with a 2-2-2 and Jeff going, the winner of Survivor China. And we're all just like, what is about to happen right now?
I wonder if they had tied here, because we now know in Ghost Island, if you 2 people tie, third person, it makes the decision. But here, like, it was possible there could have been a 3-way tie.
No, there couldn't have been. No, because there were 7 people on the jury. So somebody would have still cast the deciding vote. I'm just saying Frosty would have been that deciding vote to make it the winner of Survivor China. And it's Frosty, of all people on this season, who really has the least impact of any of the players who make the merge, who's casting the deciding vote. That would have been insane.
Okay, for a second I thought you said there was only 6, and I'm like, maybe there was. Okay.
No.
One of my, if not like, I guess everyone's favorite Frosty scene is when Amanda's going for the idol that's up top, and Frosty's like so bored that he just tries to get the idol with her. It's so unbelievable because it's so frustrating, and Amanda's so bad at acting. Yeah. She's like, "Oh no, I was just poking that thing."
Her acting got a lot better for Survivor Micronesia.
Yeah,
we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, this was. I mean, the thing was when we saw the way this started, the Fei Long tribe was the good one. I think Jean Hu sucked. Right? Am I right on that? Fei Long was.
Well, they had Chicken, so I don't know, but they did vote him out first.
Well, who was the tribe that kept winning? Who was the tribe that started with James? Was that
Fei
Jean
Long
Hu?
kept winning.
Oh, okay. So Fei Long kept winning. So when this starts off, Todd, Courtney, Amanda, they get together pretty much right away. They pull in James. Jean Robert's on the outs. Aaron's kind of doing his thing. And then Leslie just drives everybody absolutely insane. So the other tribe is such a hot mess that they were never going to get things together. Ashley versus Dave is just awesome. So Todd built the relationships early. And after I just said in the last 2 seasons that the tribe you start on doesn't really matter, this was a different case because there was no swap. There was that kidnapping situation, that steal your people situation where they got James and Aaron. And then we see PG with probably the greatest challenge throw of all time. She just got rid of the wrong person.
I love PG. I feel like we haven't talked about her yet, and I've been waiting. I love PG. Okay.
She got screwed here because people hated her because she got rid of one of the strong buff guys who we were rooting for. Mm-hmm. And then that meant everybody hated PG when PG really didn't do anything wrong. And PG was kind of the voice of reason on her tribe. And she squirrels her way through this game and gets very, very far in it. But because there was no swap, those relationships that Todd built early are what set him apart, because even the relationship he was able to build with James, which doesn't seem strong on the surface, he gets James, says this is where that idol's going to be. They try to throw a challenge to so that James can use an idol to vote somebody out. It doesn't work, but James has both idols. All this, that relationship he built with James is the reason why the double idol blindside is able to be pulled off, because that night Todd goes home if James catches wind of that. He really does. And because PG votes for Todd and then James votes for PG, one other person catches wind of that, and all of a sudden we might get votes going for we might get more votes going for Todd, and Todd goes home. But James never caught wind of it. And that was because of the relationship Todd built with him early, which really speaks to, you want to talk about a social player. I mean, Todd is top-notch social game.
It harkens back to Richard Hatch. Like, Richard Hatch won because of a social game. And here we are in season 15, still proving that the social game is what wins you the game. And I know there's a lot of arguments made that modern Survivor has moved away from social game being the reason you win. And we will discuss as we get along. But here we are in season 15, proving that once again, the social game is what's going to win it for you. I feel like we so much look at the end result, the votes at the end. But here you're saying Todd could have been voted out, but because of the social game, he negated himself getting voted out. He didn't have to play an idol. He didn't have to go on a treasure hunt for something. Nothing like that. He was able to save himself with the social game. So
and never seemed like the head of the snake, even though he always was.
Very sneaky.
Very sneaky. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that, Amanda and James were just very, very vocal. Like, it was very easy to look at them and say, wow, we got to get rid of James because he's going to win challenges. We got to get rid of Amanda because, Amanda's, just good at everything. She's the social threat. And Courtney and Todd, who were the two quietest ones, and they're eavesdropping on James and Jean Robert in one of the best scenes ever, which would have gotten both of those poor men canceled. But they're eavesdropping, and it's amazing. You're like, oh my God, we got to root for Todd and Courtney, even though Todd and Courtney are snippy and Courtney will say she's bitchy and she's awful, but we're rooting for them. We really are. And they end up outdoing Amanda and James.
Yeah, it's so funny because and that's what showed, like, what's so endearing about them. We're rooting for Courtney, who isn't good in challenges and doesn't even try, and says some of the meanest but some of the funniest one-liners
in confessional
in Survivor.
Yeah. In confessional, Courtney is hilarious.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. She's the best of all time. And
you wait till we get to the confessional count later. You'll be amazed by how few confessionals she has in this season.
Oh no, she only has like 27 or 28 confessionals. It's very low.
She has 23.
23 in China, and then I think she only has like 9 in Heroes Villains.
4 in Heroes versus Villains.
Yeah. There you go.
She has 27 over 2 seasons.
27 over 2. That's what it was. See, I had 27 in my head.
You did. You had the number right. It's over 2 seasons.
She has 27 over 2 seasons, and she is the best confessional giver in Survivor history. Like, there is no doubt about it. Everything she says is go. The problem with Courtney was you could not have too much of her because you would have turned off your audience. While I love her and we love her, there are certain things. I mean, when she's ripping on Leslie and all of that, while most of America is laughing, there's a lot of America that's also not laughing.
Yeah.
The one confessional that is, like, to me, a huge no-no is when she talks about Todd's sister. Is it his sister who? She just has a really, really.
Well, she talks about, it's Denise, where she talks about being welfare or something like that.
It's
very cringy.
Think about that one.
Yeah, I do think we can't talk about Todd and Courtney without talking about how Courtney wanted Jean Robert gone for being creepy, and Todd's like, no, he's a number. I think we alluded to this earlier, but I think we do need to touch upon it because while in 2007, this was something that I feel like now Todd would have been ripped apart if he had let that happen. Jean Robert would have been ripped apart, but I feel like Todd more so because he enabled it, like we saw with Island of the Idols. And I do think we need to touch upon it a little bit because he is the winner.
Yeah, Jean Robert definitely would be ripped to shreds nowadays. Yeah. And this is like one of those things where like we're a Survivor podcast, so I don't try to be like, what should we be doing and what should we not be doing? But like I think like if you can look at it and not go to Twitter and rip these people's lives apart, and like you watch this as a TV show, you need your heroes and you need your villains.
Yeah.
And like I liked it better when they were heroes and villains on my TV. And I understand they're real people who go back to real lives and have to deal with real things. Mm-hmm. But nobody really felt like when they left that island, I don't think people were going, and maybe I'm wrong and maybe I shouldn't say this, but I don't think people were like running and being like, oh my God, Jean Robert just ruined my life. And I think that's something that like we see now. And I don't think that happened in that season, which is very interesting. And I don't know how much of that is just the times or whatever, but like Jean Robert was despicable. And at the reunion, he's like the biggest part of it. And he's like, everybody's laughing at every single word he says after we just watched him be horrific on our TV for 20 days or whatever he lasts.
Yeah, I mean, Courtney does like the funniest joke because of it, where she's like, how am I going to keep him warm? I'm like, 90 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that like I guess like the short answer is like the times were different, but I think times were different not because it was okay for Jean Robert to do that. I think because on the flip side, Courtney or like the woman doesn't realize that she can like sound an alarm or say that this isn't okay. I think it's more leans towards that. And candidly, I haven't rewatched that in a really long time, but I don't think it was as egregious as what happened in season 39. But
no.
Again, I think it's a lot of different factors, but my guess would be that it was like a discomfort and the person like, I don't know what, like Courtney, like the person in Courtney's position didn't really like, they didn't have much of a platform to say like, well, this is okay.
And it is interesting though, because Wes, like what you were saying, Todd using this as part of his strategy and part of the number, it's also something about Courtney though, because we see that happen in Island of the Idols and people get so distraught when Kelly goes home before Dan.
Yeah.
But Courtney,
I understand.
Courtney in this season, she says we got to get rid of him, and Todd does whatever, and Courtney does say, okay, you know what, like that's okay with me, but we're gonna get rid of him. And as soon as they can get rid of Jean Robert, they do get rid of Jean Robert in the 5-3-1 split there. But like Courtney, it was her personality too that is saying like, okay, Todd, I will do this for now, but we're getting rid of this bastard at some point. And I think that's also like, you have to look at each individual person and how each individual person handles each situation. And I'm not going to say one handles it better than the other. I'm just saying Courtney's personality and Courtney's herself, she wanted to handle it in a way of like, we're going to blindside him and it's going to be amazing. And we're going to like devastate him and ruin him. And it was also one person working with her, not an entire tribe working against her.
Courtney had different
to bring it back to their alliance, it's because there was like actual trust and friendship between them. Like that was a real live alliance. That was a season 15 alliance, not a season 39 alliance. Changes with the wind.
Yeah.
I think Courtney's a different personality where Courtney's like very her and Kelly are not the same person. I think we can agree on that. Courtney is way more. They're just different. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah. So, and because Courtney does get it further, like you said, like Jean Robert barely makes the jury, and Courtney gets to second. You know, she actually makes the final travel. It also, I think, it really helps smooth out the edges on that because I think had Courtney gone next and then Jean Robert staying in final three, it'd be a little different. But because Jean Robert gets what's coming to him, he's a second jury member. My bad. He gets what's coming to him. It's like sweet revenge in a way. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this is the first season. I think Todd is really a big integral part. And I also think this is why China's so popular. This is the first season where real life friendships and like the old school mentality of like, we're going to work together and we're going to have fun. And this is where I would make the cutoff. Mid-school starts. Season 15 is when mid-school starts. I think everything before that, season 13 and 14 are so hard to place just because, you know, they were so heavily recruited.
I would argue where old school ends is China.
No, I think it's the beginning of mid-school, because my reasoning is this is when we really do start to see strategy start impacting the game, even when relationships are at stake. And Todd and Courtney is an example of that. And them voting out James is an example of that. And them keeping Jean Robert around is an example of that. And I think this is the first season we really see that, because before this, it's like, if we like you, we'll keep you around longer. If we don't like you, we're going to get rid of you. And even if it impacts our strategy, it's what we need to make happen. This was the first season where we really, really, really start to see Todd and Amanda manipulate it, where it's like, we're friends, and I love you, James, but you have 2 idols and it's final 7. Get the hell off the island. And we need to get rid of Jean Robert, but we can't get rid of him yet. And this is where I would think that starts to begin, because in Micronesia, we see the exact same type of gameplay where it's like, we like you, but we must get rid of you now. So that's just, I think that this is the beginning of it. I think Todd and Amanda really birthed this. I really do believe that.
If you want to, someone mentioned this in chat, so I'll mention it now. If you want to go by what Ethan Zahn says, it's old school and new school goes by season 20s and old school. And if you played your first season before old school, you're technically old school, based on my conversation with him. So somebody mentioned in the chat that Todd had an old school shirt. So they're agreeing, I guess, with me.
Well, and I think the beginning of mid school kind of counts as old school.
No, I think mid school is a gray area because Ethan doesn't dress mid-school.
I mean, right where you feel, right when you said 5-3-1 split, you don't hear about a 5-3-1 split any earlier than that.
No.
Like that's a like a 3-2-1. That's like a bit of taking down the road 2-4. Like that's very forward-thinking strategy.
This is the first time that we've had 3 people in the finale with votes. Let me double check. Yeah, that's correct. 4-2-1. I know you're talking about something different right now, but you just made me realize this is the first time where everyone got votes in the finale too.
It's one of the only times where everybody gets voted in the finale. Yeah, because it's
the
best.
3, of course.
Yeah, it's the best final 3 of all time. And Alexa, like I think you're right. You know, you start talking about this 5-3-1, and you know, James goes with 5-1-1, and you got to think, like, you got to give PG the credit where credit is due. PG knew that James was going to vote for her, and knew that if Todd played that idol, and this is why PG is so brilliant, and it didn't come out in her second chance. But when PG found that out, she said, "Well, if James is going to vote for me, and everybody else is going to vote for Todd, James is going to vote for me, everybody else is going to vote for James." If James plays the idol, I go home. Well, that's not going to happen. I'm going to vote for Todd. And Todd probably goes home that night, because on a revote, I think that even though James would have probably ended up voting for Todd, like that would have been a switch. You would have had Eric vote for Todd. You would have had, PG vote for Todd. And there might have been a way to get it where Todd goes out there, which would have been insane. So I just think like this is when we really start to see the strategy evolving beyond just like, oh, we got to cut you, or oh, like this little simple move. You know, Sesternino does his thing in Amazon, but for the most part, like, oh, okay, well, we can keep you here because we'll still have a 5-3 advantage. This is where we really start to see it evolve past that and be like, okay, how can we use people to move further in the game? And I think the problem is now in season 39, when you look at a similar situation like we've been talking about, in season 39, I think the problem is people have lost the humanity of the game. The old school mentality has completely disappeared now.
True.
And so this was the beginning of the new school mentality coming in. But nowadays we've completely lost, and I'm not saying for season 40 because that was a different story, but we've kind of completely lost those like real human moments. And I'm sure the entire cast of season 39 would disagree with me. Mm-hmm. I've met so many of them. I like so many of them, but there's a difference I feel in what they as like a group be like, oh, I love you, we're going to hang out all the time. And like Ethan, Lex, and Big Tom in Survivor Africa. Like there's a difference to those relationships and how we view them, and how Ethan, Lex, and Tom, they were never going to backstab each other because they couldn't, because that would have gone against their morals. And nowadays it's like, we don't really give a shit. Like we're playing a game. Yeah. Todd, Amanda, and Courtney was the beginning of the middle. They're just the middle of those two things.
Yeah.
True.
And now my throat hurts. So somebody please talk.
Does Todd win a modern season?
Yeah.
Does Todd's type win?
Does Todd's type win a modern season?
Yes.
I don't know. You're the one who's a huge Todd fan. Do you think so?
I think his type easily wins. I think Todd could come back. I think Todd could win Survivor.
I think that type can definitely win because it's managing the threat level again.
Yeah, I think Adam Klein is a Todd type winner, and it's not because they're both like 5'5". It's because they really do both play similar games. They're not the biggest threat, or they are the biggest threat, but they convince other people that other people are the bigger threats. And so I think they play a very, very similar game. And I think Todd could come out, and I think he's gone through so much in his own personal life and everything like that. I feel like he'd come out and he could win another season, or at least, go through another growth out there. But yeah, I think the way Todd played was find your alliance, backstab who you have to backstab, and just make sure you get enough votes. And that is the name of the game in today's Survivor.
I would love a winners versus runner-up season where we get 10 of the winners that didn't play in Winners at War versus like the best runner-ups.
Yeah,
that would be such a great season, because I feel like Todd and Earl, I would love to see them on another season. Anytime, any person who's won once and hasn't played again, I would love to see again.
I'm the same way, because we've seen so many of them now.
Cool. I know people aren't a fan of, but like, as long as he's like, I mean, it's been 14 years since he's done things that like everyone's like aware of. So hopefully he's gotten more mature. So I say that with that grain of salt. If he's still like, doing things, I don't condone that, but I would love to see winners who've only won once, like Vesepia, on a season like that, because I feel like they're never going to do another Winners at War.
No, they'll never have enough.
But they could do versus runner-ups.
Yeah, and I think out of the winners that didn't play on Winners at War, like people are super thirsty for them now. Like everyone wants to see Earl and Todd. Everyone wants to see Brian. I mean, we want to see Vesepia. I feel like she has a super fan following. Like I would love to see Jenna play. The problem is there are 4 women to choose from.
Well, and I think that's why you'd have to do a winners versus runners up, because you have 4 women to choose from. And then I'm sure you could find somebody who would, maybe season 41 has a female winner. And then, if season 41 ever happened.
Yeah, I'm not talking about for 41, 42. This might be.
No, I completely agree. But then I think
48.
I think you can make those numbers a little bit more even. Yeah, I don't know. I think it would be interesting. But Alexa, do you think Todd could win, or a player like Todd?
That type of game can totally win. I think, I get kind of an Adam vibe, because he wasn't the loudest personality, but to me, he was always the one running the show, which but like that's typically not something that can win right now. But I think Todd did a really good job of not seeming like he was in charge. And Todd played up egos so well. And I think that's a really hard skill to like genuinely do. So I think Todd could win again.
Oh, just to clarify, I didn't mean anyone on that season I just made up that they only played once. I'm just saying I would love to see anyone who's only played once and won. But like Tina, for example, would be great for it, because
good point.
She didn't play in Winners at War, but Tina's iconic. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to restrict it to like 4 women. I meant there's definitely more women.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
But I agree, though. Todd can play again. I'm not as in love with Todd as you are, Phil. Apparently you, Todd, and Michelle just need to have like a weekend getgetaway together, because you guys.
Don't give him that.
Yeah, I mean, I just think Todd's a great winner. He wins the best season. I think it's one of the most competitive seasons, the most competitive final 3 we've ever had. I don't think we'll ever have a final 3 that good again. Where you had 3 players who all played their games the best way. All 3 of them are huge in the community. None of them were GOATs. I mean, you walk out of that, any of them as the winner, and they're a deserved winner. And I think Todd is the right winner for that season. But man, like this was 2007, the fall of 2007. I was too young to realize how much I loved Courtney Yates at the time, because I was not rooting for Courtney Yates, but I should have been. But it's amazing, because you had Amanda, Courtney, Todd, James, PG. You had all these storylines in this season. Yeah. And it produces a very satisfactory winner. It produces the best final tribal council, I think, ever. And yeah, if you're going to win that season, and you're going to have the moment where your sister comes out and she's talking about or somebody comes out and says your sister had a miscarriage, and everybody thinks you're trying to curry favor because Johnny Fairplay is an asshole. And I mean that with love, Fairplay. I mean, you have to overcome all of that and you still win the game. Nah, Todd is, I won't say where I ranked him in my top 100 in case I did a top 100, but I have Todd very, very high.
Yeah. How many confessionals do you think Todd got this season, if you had to guess?
63.
What do you think, Alexa?
58.
Close. You guys both were close. Alexa was a little bit closer. He had 60. Second closest was PG with 43. Amanda had 40.
It's always amazing how few Amanda had, because Amanda is so well loved, and I wouldn't be surprised if her numbers in Micronesia weren't super high either.
Mm-hmm.
Amanda,
get there.
Yeah, Amanda is an interesting one because Amanda had a huge following. I was never the biggest Amanda fan, but I'm always amazed how much people did love Amanda, and I just never found her to be a great narrator, and I don't think she was. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact I know she had moved from Montana to Los Angeles right before this season aired. So I think she still had kind of like that, you know, not, this isn't a bad thing, but more of like that country, quieter, and she's going up against like a flight attendant who that might be their job, a waitress that might be her job. Like they're going to give you better confessionals throughout. I mean, even John Robert, as much of an ass as he is, phenomenal confessional giver. He's absolutely phenomenal because every time you're just like, this is a real person who's saying these things and really believes them.
I think the appeal of Amanda is that she can be boring. Like, I think there is something appealing about the normal person, and it's like for us super fans, it's not like exciting, but I think like for your average American to watch the show, like I very much understand why Amanda's relatable, because I think Amanda's like generally normal, except for the fact that she's a model. I know that's like not a normal thing.
Yeah, but then everyone jokes how her like eyes are always like.
I know. Yeah, she got crap for that. That was stupid.
It's like if a normal person became a model, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, also, Jordan Alford makes a good point. She's also very hot, which helps.
Yeah. She is very hot. That does help. That's might be part of the reason why people love James so much, is because you could literally like use his abs as a cutting board.
It's so crazy. We totally skipped over it. James gets 2 idols and gets voted out with 2 idols. Are they even in his pocket? Because they're massive. They're not.
I don't think they came.
They were in his bag. No, they did, because in his voting thing, he's like, I got voted out with 2 idols, and he shows them both.
No, I meant they weren't literally in his pockets, though.
No, they probably were hiding. He probably had them in his shirt on top of his pecs, and nobody could even tell that they were bigger because his pecs are gigantic.
They're like a little bit more square tonight than usual, but that's that. Whatever. He probably had a banana because, you know, banana etiquette. What are you gonna do? We'll get there.
I mean, we can use James as a good transition conversation, because he immediately is no longer the dumbest player in Survivor history, by his own words, in the season that Parvati Shallow rises to the occasion.
Yeah, the most overrated winner in the history.
So Parvati, I know we joke a lot, or not joke. I think there's a lot of conversation about like how All-Stars, how did Amber get on All-Stars, but then she wins. You know, here you could have argued, how did Parvati get on Micronesia? You know, there's so many females they could have pulled for this, but Parvati it's on based on her Cook Islands appearance. You could have argued that she gets far as like Amber does, but here Parvati like just comes out of the gate and like surprises everyone and just like becomes a fan favorite basically after the season.
Yeah.
I'm going to let everybody else go because I have just conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory. Jonathan Penner's knee is part of the Illuminati. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. It was the reason that Parvati Shallow was propelled to pretty much having like a miniature statue built of her on Survivor Island. I have so much to say about that. The interesting thing again, though, is when we come into a season where there's some returning players, it's always amazing how threat levels do impact the game. And we saw that back in even in Guatemala, where Stephanie was seen as more of a hero than somebody we got to vote off. Bobby John, on the other hand, people were kind of like, this guy's not as great as we thought he was going to be. And then on this season, Fair Play, he's been very vocal on his podcast, on our podcast, saying that he had tried to make this huge pregame alliance. And then it just didn't work out. As soon as they hit the island, he gets voted out, whatever. Yao Man, huge target on his back. But if you start looking at everybody else, other than Ozzy, there weren't gigantic targets here. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact of like Amanda and James were still fresh in everybody's minds. Sari, people were a little worried about, but not like They didn't think that she was going to be able to replicate what she replicated in Panama. But Parvati probably has the smallest target out of any of the players coming into this season. And quickly that changes because then we see her playing Heroes Villains and play a completely different game with a huge target. But it is fascinating how Amber had the smallest target, probably her, Jenna Lewis, in All-Stars. And then Parvati comes out with probably the smallest target coming into the season.
You could argue that
it's completely fair. This doesn't seem like a conspiracy theory yet.
You could.
We're not there yet.
That Amanda and James were also not massive targets. Now, because Micronesia was filming while China was airing, which I feel like it gets important as we, especially here as we get into the later these seasons coming up, namely in Samoa and Heroes vs. Villains, how when a season shot back to back and you didn't see them play, you don't know what they play like. Here, Micronesia started shooting October 29th. China started airing September 20th. And I'm just going to double check because did they see James get voted out, before Micronesia? Amanda didn't know she had lost yet, but I think the rumor mill, or maybe she said this herself, I think she figured out when there's no other winners on the season that she figured she had lost China. Because she didn't know when she won Micronesia, she had lost China. So you could say that Amanda and James were maybe not a small target Parvati, but like nobody really knows like the extent of their play, their skill level. I'm checking right now.
What I love about the way that this season starts, and you got to go back to the beginning to get to the end, right? What I love about the way that this season starts is how you have the fan tribe, and all of the fans say, hey, like, who are we playing against? And then Jeff starts calling them out one by one, and Fair Play gets booed, and Ozzy gets cheered, and Amanda and James, oh my God.
Yeah, man, yeah.
And Parvati doesn't really get much. And I love that they started this way because you immediately knew your threat level as soon as you walked out there. And Parvati comes out with that smile, and it's like, oh yeah, that girl, she was on a season. Yeah, whatever. Like, I'm sure Kathy Sleckman knew exactly who Parvati was. So, but when you look at this, like, it's an interesting way that they started the season. And I really think it's, a cool way to start it because immediately these favorites know where they stand. Jonathan Penner, nobody was excited to see Jonathan Penner. Nobody wanted to see him out there. But where my conspiracy theory comes in now. So let's talk here about Parvati's game. And this isn't even a conspiracy theory. I'm just playing it up. But one of my big issues with Parvati's game, and it's not so much to do with her game, and it's more just to do with all of you who watch this show and are so endearing and love me, and I love you, but I need to just get this off my chest. I always get really, really mad when people say things, and we're not quite at this season yet, but when people talk about somebody like Aubrey, and they talk about Michelle's win, and it's, Michelle got so lucky because Aubrey would have at final 11 or whatever. Neil gets voted or has to get medically evacuated. He's got this. And then Michelle gets lucky because, Joe gets medevaced at whatever place Joe gets medevaced. And we hear that all the time. Then Parvati gets listed as like the greatest winner of all time. And so this shows that I have double standards, just like all of you have double standards. But I just want to call attention to all of your double standards. The thing with Parvati is there is no denying she plays a phenomenal game. Sari plays a better game, but Sari doesn't make final two, so whatever. Parvati plays the better game. But when you look at what happens in this season, it's really fascinating. The tribes start out, Fair Play's gone, Yao Man's gone. We get to a swap at 16, and it's even. It's 8 versus 8. And Parvati goes to the other side with Jonathan Penner, with Eliza Orleans, with James Clement. So what does Penner do? He starts going around and saying, we're going to blindside Parvati and we're going to blindside James because they're getting too close. We need to get rid of them. The next thing you know, Penner's knee gets infected. Penner gets pulled from the game. Now, all of a sudden, Parvati's still safe.
Yeah.
Then later on, the only other time that Parvati could have possibly been in danger, Kathy Sleckman is pretty much forced to quit Survivor. And I know that's kind of like a rumor and like whatever, but she's essentially forced to quit. So
she kind of confirms it.
Wait. Why was Kathy Sleckman forced to quit?
They were worried about her mental health, I believe, out there.
So it's not that
I think she was worried about her own mental health. Like she pulled kind of herself.
I think she pulled herself, and then production was also like, production doesn't really give her flack for that one. Whereas like with Austin, it was like, how dare you? But with this one, it's more of like, well understood. But all I'm trying to say is we talk all the time about like, how lucky are you? And then everybody just kind of wants to be like, well, Michelle, she was so lucky and Aubrey got robbed and blah, blah, blah. Parvati, after that tribe swap, went to the merge without having another chance to be voted out of the game. When as soon as those tribes swapped, she was going to be the next boot from those tribes. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's played up by the editing to make us believe like, wow, here's the underdog story of Parvati, because that could very well be the case. But Jonathan Penner was rallying the troops. And I think that's what's so devastating is Penner had Kathy and Eliza, and he was being able to start pulling in. I forget exactly who it was, if it was Alexis and Jason or whatever it was, but he was starting to kind of put the pieces into motion. And then he gets medevac from the game. And I always find that one to be so devastating because Penner had so much game left to play. But all of that is just to say that like Parvati got so lucky in this pre-merge, and then takes over in the post-merge. Mm-hmm. So like for me, it's like, obviously we're all going to remember her post-merge, the Micronesia post-merge, probably the greatest post-merge in the history of Survivor. It's absolutely epic. Blindside after blindside after blindside after blindside. Parvati got really lucky to get there. And it really built her, aura. And then she also got very lucky that there was a final 2 and not a final 3. That was also another huge thing.
I don't think the final 2 is planned. I know a lot of people talk about that. By the way, guys, Survivor constantly has unfair twists and stuff that happens mid-season that none of the players are told is going to happen. So as a winner, as a player, you have to adapt to them. You don't have a choice. You have to expect the unexpected in a way. Not to quote Big Brother, but I kind of did. That something's going to happen your season that you're not going to know about. People didn't go into Edge of Extinction knowing Edge of Extinction is going to exist. People didn't go into Africa knowing the tribe swap is going to happen. It goes back to season 3. Stuff's going to happen, and you're not going to be told at the beginning of the season it's going to happen.
For when we talk about Ben and Heroes, Healers, Hustlers.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's probably my biggest point, but we're so far from that, I'm not worried about at the moment. But, stuff is going to happen. Changes are going to be made that you didn't know about. But in this case, I feel like they had their hand forced on that final 2. I'm sure it was a final 3 planned because Kathy, because Penner, because James, 3 people are pulled out of the game when they weren't expecting them to. Yeah. So,
and I want to put this up. Christopher Thompson, you can't fault a winner for other people leaving the game. You play with the circumstances giving. And I think that is completely 100% true. What I'm more saying is like the hypocrisy of Parvati played the greatest game of all time and is the best winner ever. And Michelle sucks because she got lucky. It's like, no, every survivor gets lucky. And Parvati's game had a lot of luck in it because she started off as not a target and then became a target because of how close she started getting with James. And Penner just saw right through that and was like, wow, this girl is just working it on James. And so he wanted to get rid of her. The final 3 situation, all of that. I just think it's you have to look at these winners as a whole. And Parvati's game is probably one of the most viewed because of her as, who everybody normally considered until Sandra won twice, the best female player of all time. I just don't agree for a couple reasons. I still think her game is phenomenal. I just think that her game in Micronesia has a lot more flaws than people give it credit for. Her post-merge game has 0 flaws. It's her pre-merge game. And she got really lucky that for how many was it in a row? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row. She was immune. And the guy who really wanted her out gets pulled from the game. I am done. Everybody else talk positively about Parvati before everybody unsubscribes.
I think that's completely fair. I don't think any of that is particularly controversial.
No. I will say Parvati, sometimes you get lucky breaks. Sometimes your tribe wins every single, pre-merge challenge like Tom Westman. Nobody downplays Tom Westman's win because he was only eligible at 3 tribal councils. Parvati, she played circumstances given to her. She didn't force the Air Tribe to lose a bunch of challenges. She didn't force people to quit the game. Parvati's just playing the game she's being handed. And, sometimes lucky breaks happen for you. Mm-hmm. And you taking advantage of that is part of being a good player. Like when we get to Fabio, we could argue, was Fabio literally handed the game? We'll get there when we get there. But with Parvati, she did play a game. I do think the one thing Parvati's, and definitely with revisionist history, if you watch Winners at War, that episode they aired before the season actually aired. Do you guys remember that one? Where it was reflecting upon Survivor?
Oh, yeah.
So in that episode, Parvati narrates why Eric gave up the immunity necklace, which I do think we need to talk about to an extent. why Eric gave it the Mew necklace, but when you rewatch the episode, I'm sure more happened actually on the island. When you rewatch the episode, Parvati was probably the smallest factor out of that group of women to actually make Eric do that move. Like Amanda, Suri, and Natalie, you could argue, all had bigger roles. Definitely Natalie and Amanda all had bigger roles.
Definitely Suri. Suri's the one who says, "Do you think he'd give you the idol?"
Because nobody
yeah,
her. Yeah. And then Natalie talks to him. Amanda, of course, had been working in multiple episodes leading up to that. And Parvati's almost like the smallest factor in that. But she narrates in Winners of War as if she was the one who, made it happen.
Yeah. And I think part of it is honestly as simple as she's the one who had the best voting confessional when getting rid of Eric. Like, she's the one who said, like, you're the dumbest survivor ever, whatever she said. And then even when we get to Heroes vs. Villains, Jeff, like, Parvati calls it out. Parvati's like, well, why is Suri a hero and I'm a villain? And she's being cute about it, but she's kind of right. Yeah.
She's absolutely right. No, she's absolutely right. And like, again, like I was over here and I'm like knocking Parvati's game. It's not that I'm knocking Parvati's game. Like, I still think Parvati, like, if you're ranking Survivor, she's still in the top 10. There's no doubt about it. It's just that, like, you look at these types of moments and like Suri did so much legwork in Survivor Micronesia. I mean, this is the ultimate masterclass in Survivor behind Sesternino's in season 6, because Sesternino was doing it for the first time. This was Suri's second time playing, but this is a masterclass. It's a masterclass in Survivor. And Parvati and Amanda, whether they want to admit it or not, learned a hell of a lot from Suri in this season. And so, like, it's not that I'm really trying to say, like, guys, you need to understand Parvati sucks. No, Parvati's a top 10 Survivor player. There's no doubt about it. This is a great win. There's no doubt about it. It's just that, like you're saying, Wes, a lot of the stuff she is credited for, it's that revisionist history where in the moment, Suri convinces Natalie, Natalie convinces Eric. Parvati's not really a part of any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, from what we're shown at least. And so I understand more things happen on the island than what we're shown on the show, but we can only work with what we know for a fact. And we know for a fact what we saw on the show. So I'm sure Parvati had a hand in it, but Parvati getting to tell the how this happened in Winners of War, I feel like almost what's that, 24 seasons later, is like updating people like, hey, remember this move that I made? So I think it's something we can't. Parvati was a part of, but she did not like lead the charge and do what we saw most of the work to make it happen.
Yeah, and let's talk about though what she was able to pull off in this post merge, because we really haven't talked about it yet. I mean, Eliza was an easy first boot in this post merge because people just could not stand Eliza, so they get rid of her. The next time she goes out, Parvati wins her individual immunity. It's the iconic crying, amazing. She wins individual immunity, and at that tribal, she decides, you know what? I'm losing Amanda. I'm losing Eric. They're all just being sucked into this Aussie thing. James is there, like, she knew it, and so her and Suri worked it. And they pull off probably the best blindside in the history of the show, other than the James one. I mean, this is up there. I mean, you could season 15 and 16, you could just start juggling which one's the best ever. And then the next episode, she completely blindsides Jason, because Jason thought he was back in the good graces and everything was fine.
He did.
And he thought everything was fine, and then he gets absolutely blindsided. And then James gets pulled from the game. And then, Parvati and Amanda are the only two who know that Amanda has, like, Parvati knows Amanda has the idol, correct?
Yeah.
And Parvati's the only one who knows with Amanda. And they say, okay, screw it. We're getting rid of Alexis. You play your idol. I won't tell anybody. So again, even though that's Amanda's move, Parvati was a huge factor in that. And then she's obviously there for the Eric thing, and we all know that. But that stretch, that post-merge stretch, like, she's just playing on another level, but it wasn't just her. Like, when you look at all of these winners and you think about it, Earl had to do everything on his own pretty much. Him and Yao Man did a lot together, but Earl was the driver of his game. Yul had Ozzy. Todd had Courtney and Amanda. Parvati had so much help throughout the season. And another thing, James gets medevac. That's another one. I mean, James was pretty much stuck anyway, but James gets medevac. Probably prevents it from being a final 3, and instead now it's a final 2. So there's just so many factors that go into this.
That Ozzy blindside was so epic. I feel like we forget, but like I just rewatched it recently, and like the way they edit it, like Ozzy does like his casual look back and he goes, the music is so perfect to go with like Ozzy's look. And then like in the next episode when they talk about Ozzy's blindside, they almost play that clip like without editing around it. Like usually in the recaps it's like faster editing. No, they let that one play out like Ozzy's whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. It like makes me want to laugh. Also, I'm like a little like creeped out. I'm like, is Ozzy gonna kill me?
And that's what makes the season so good. Like when you said Ozzy, that reminded me of him really having a weird final tribal council. Like that is probably the weirdest final tribal ever, because we have Ozzy proclaiming his love for Amanda and Natalie proclaiming her sexual attraction to Parvati. Like the whole thing is just like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, those are the things that like make Micronesia just absolutely epic. And like Parvati is able to handle those moments so well. I mean, she was never going to get Ozzy's vote, so it is what it is. Mm-hmm. But she just leans into it with Natalie and probably prevents what would be the most awkward moment in Survivor history, a 4-4 tie at Final Tribal. I literally have no idea who votes in that situation, because it would have been a 4-4 tie. Parvati wins 5-3. It would have been a 4-4 tie. What do? Do they just pull Amy off the non-jury?
Are we talking about Cerise there? I'm sorry, I missed that.
No, what do we do? No, this is literally how it played out. There were 8 members of the jury, and it was 1 vote away from being a tie. If Natalie votes for Amanda.
I thought you said 4-4-4. That's why I was confused. 4-4.
No, if it's a 4-4 tie, who votes that tie-breaking vote?
Bro. That's what I'm saying. I think it was mid-season. It had to have been when Jade went home, that they're like, we are running out of people to get rid of for episodes. We need to do
a final 2.
Yeah, that's what makes me really think. You're right. I wonder if I don't know. That's a great question. Do they pull Amy? Amy's on a pre-jury trip. She hasn't watched, what's happened. So I don't know. That's a great question. I'm glad it didn't happen, because that probably been super controversial.
Yeah,
it would have been crazy. And that also goes back to like why Suri was expecting it to be a final 3, because it would have been the same thing as China, 7-person jury, final 3. And I think Suri wipes the floor with Amanda and Parvati. I think she wins easy.
Someone said, what about a fire making challenge for the win? I mean, would it go past Jeff to do that?
That would have been insane.
For the winning of Survivor.
That would have been terrible. That would have ruined Survivor forever.
Yeah, then the social game. It's all about your fire making skills. Got to win.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what they would have done. I wish somebody would ask Jeff and find out what would have happened in that situation if they had a contingency plan, because that would have been crazy. But does Parvati's game still win today? And obviously we see everybody wants to be Parvati, but does the game still win?
It sounds like it doesn't even make the merge.
Right?
Well, we do see her play not many seasons later. Would you say her game in Heroes vs. Villains is similar to this one?
No, it's very different.
Of Heroes vs. Villains. Yeah, I agree. Her game. I think her game's also better in
Totally agree.
In Heroes vs. Villains. So does this particular game win? I think it's harder, because so many things did happen, and like how many times have we had 3 people leave in a season? Co-wrong, and this one's the only one that comes out top of my head. I can't think of another season where it's been 3 people who had to leave early due to factors that, besides being voted out.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think you're right. I don't think the game she played in that season makes the merge anymore, because we saw it too with Amber in All Stars. Similar game pre-merge, where it's like just survive, do what you got to do. And then post-merge, obviously, Parvati plays a much different game. But if you think about that, these under the radar female players, they don't go as far as they used to. And I also think that's why we've seen a downturn in terms of how many female winners the show has had of late. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of the lower, because of Parvati and because of what she did in Micronesia more so than Heroes Villains, and because of Sandra and what Sandra did, the under the radar girls are suddenly the biggest threats out there, because Parvati and Sandra played the game so well that now you have to get rid of those people. And I think that's why we've seen a downturn in female winners, because the under the radar ones that would normally go very far go out early, and then you're stuck with Angelina, Nora. I use the word stuck. I don't mean stuck. I just mean like, that's who you have left, and they're louder, bigger personalities. We haven't seen like Sarah, even a bigger personality. I mean, I know Sarah's not on the level of Angelina and Nora, but she's a bigger personality. So I don't know. I think that this type of game is really difficult to win with nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get to it when we talk about like the past 10 seasons or the past like 5 seasons, but I think Michelle winning changed a lot of that.
do you think Parvati herself could ever win again?
Definitely not.
No, she's too different.
I think she blew her shot. Her second shot at winning was Heroes versus Villains, really. I think Winners of War, she was a goner from the beginning. She was right there with like Boston Rob's considered like one of the biggest targets.
There was nothing you could do. And especially with all the stuff that has changed in Survivor. And this will always be a knock on the new school winner. Sorry, everybody, because if I ever played, I'd be a new school winner too. But it's always going to be a knock. And that's the fact of like, there's so much bullshit in the games now that you cannot play as calculated of a game as Surrey Fields played. You cannot play as calculated of a game as Parvati Shallow played. Like, you just can't do it anymore. And that's a problem with the game. And that's a flaw. And there's no denying that that's a flaw. And I think that that's part of the reason why like Parvati couldn't come out in Winners at War with a similar strategy to what she had in Heroes Villains, because there's no way to pull it off again. Like, there's just too much random shit in the game to be able to do it again. So that's just how I feel about that.
Yeah, I think Parvati herself would never have a shot at winning again. Her name's too big, and isn't it like kind of crazy? It's almost like if she never played Heroes versus Villains, would she have had a better shot in Winners of War? You know, because is it Heroes versus Villains that really elevates her to the level that she is today, or was it Micronesia?
I think Micronesia incorrectly elevated her to a level, and then Heroes Villains just solidified her at that level. And I think Heroes Villains is when she should have been solidified at that level. And I still don't think she played a perfect game in Heroes Villains either. I don't think she was actually robbed at Final Tribal, but that's for another day. But yeah, that's what I think about that. So I think that, you know, if she doesn't play Heroes Villains, she probably still doesn't do too well in this season, because even though people would have forgotten about her, they still would have been like, man, she got Eric to give up the immunity necklace. There was still like the defining moment, even though she wasn't really the factor in it.
Yeah, I think Heroes versus Villains more solidified what Micronesia did rather than like really add to it.
Sure.
Totally.
And I do think the whole concept of Micronesia, which we have kind of skimmed over, is really flawed. And I think we really saw it again in Caramone, where the favorites are just going to dominate the fans.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if you truly got a cast of super fans, maybe it'd be competitive. Like if you got a bunch of people who are like super aware, but even then, just like playing once, I feel like your nerves are not the same as playing a second time. Because you hear a lot of new players who are like, man, I don't even remember like a lot of what happened. It was just all so fast.
Well, and I think too, like, you know, Eric Reichenbach never gives up his immunity necklace if he hadn't seen these people play before. I think they just ran circles around him. And like, I know Natalie's the one who talks him into it, but you know, he was overwhelmed, and we could very easily be talking about Eric Reichenbach right now. In an alternate universe where he does not give up that necklace, we're probably talking about him right now, because he would have won the rest of those immunities. He was a challenge beast. I mean, people forget that. And that was back when you just had to be a challenge beast. It didn't matter. You just had to be a beast and you'd win the challenges. And he would have won all those challenges. He would have went right to the final two and he would have won. He really would have won.
When he was, do you remember when he was, remember when they had the machine gun challenge? I totally forgot the machine gun.
Yeah. Well, he was just one of those guys who, I mean, I know people like that. He was a freaking cross-country runner, kind of nerdy guy who was just like, I want to be on Survivor. And you have all those random talents. You probably couldn't kick a soccer ball far at all, but he could do all that little random stuff and had endurance like nobody else. And I mean, you're going to tell me Sari was going to beat him at a challenge at the end? Parvati was going to beat him at a challenge at the end? None of them were going to beat him. There's no chance.
I don't think Eric, as we saw him in that Micronesia, wins in the final two, though. I don't think he beats Parvati. I don't think he definitely doesn't beat Sari.
I think we see a much different edit though if Eric actually goes further, because I don't think we see him as a buffoon. When he gets Amy Cusack, Alexa, cover your ears because I know this breaks your heart. When he is the sole reason Amy Cusack goes home before the merge, and it's between Amy and Eric, and he goes to that tribal and he's just like the blah 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 blah, and he literally just says blah 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 blah. It's brilliant. I mean, he is phenomenal in that moment, and he gets no credit for it because he gives up a freaking immunity necklace.
Well, I'm not saying he wasn't. Sorry, go ahead, Alexa.
He just totally played her. That was such a good move.
Yeah,
I'm not saying Eric isn't a good player. I am saying that. I recently rewatched this and actually made a video for the Patreon talking about why did Eric give up the immunity necklace, and was it actually the immunity necklace giving up that's the dumbest move, or was it something leading up to it? I'm not going to spoil exactly, but long story short, it wasn't the immunity necklace. I think it was just the straw that broke the camel's back. Eric was doing a lot of things in the post-merge that he could have done differently that would have kept his view of how he was viewed by the jury differently, because he's like openly admitting to things that other people are like burying him for at tribal council, that if Eric was like, this is like part of the game, like I had to do this to make, but Eric's really like, yep, I did lie. Yep, I did. I did do this. And things like that. I don't think if he gets to the jury, I think that stops him from winning. I'm not saying Eric's game couldn't have won. I just think how Eric was who he was as a person.
Was he 21 years old when he first played?
21 or 22, something like that. Well, I think too, like a lot of times, like it comes down to some people have that edge and know how to sell themselves. And I don't think at the time Eric knew how to sell himself. He knew how to sell himself to get on to Survivor because his audition video was amazing. But I don't think he knew how to sell himself once he was there. I don't think he had that confidence yet. I just think that he was one of those people who's kind of like searching for like, who am I right now? And so if he gets to final 3, I think that if people would have started being aggressive with him, it would have taken him off guard. Because I do think that if he gets to final 3 and he goes on an immunity run to get to final 2 and sit there at final tribal council, he probably ends up winning. I really do believe that, or he would have had a chance to win because he would have had to win the immunities. People would have respected that. People would have been pissed at the other people. But if he's sitting next to Cerise would have been like, I did this. I don't really give a shit. Like, I'm going to tell you exactly. And then that's where he would have been hurt, because when he would have been on the defensive, it wouldn't have been as good as when Suri or Amanda or Parvati. We probably would have seen Eric have a very similar final tribal council to what Amanda has in both China and in Micronesia.
That's actually something I wrote down. Do you guys think Amanda played better this season or in China?
I think she played better this season.
Not count, how she got how many votes she got, because I feel like
in the season, I feel like I saw her fight a little bit more, at least in the post-merge of the season, because pre-merge it was just like all Aussie stuff. In the post-merge, she was not a part of this Black Widow brigade. Like, she was supposed to go home, and it was just different. I think it was just her being an underdog versus her not being an underdog.
Yeah, I think her China game was probably better. I think she was more in control in China. I think in Micronesia, she was blinded by Ozzy for too long. And then she was able to rebound, but I think China was better.
Yeah, she did have that idol play where I think she was going home and she saved herself. I'll double check the votes on that one, but
no, she did. No, she did 4-2.
And she stopped that.
Yep. So. She was doing the fake cry, which showed her acting got much better from China. But how many confessionals did Parvati end this season with, and what were we looking at on this season?
For sure. Do you guys want to take a guess at Parvati? Let's take a guess at Amanda first. How many do you think Amanda got?
Amanda probably had like 50.
Last season she had 40, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to say 44.
44. No, this season she had 33. She had 7 less confessionals.
That's so crazy.
She averaged last season 3 an episode. This season she averaged 2.3. And since I don't think we're talking about her a lot in Heroes versus Villains, I'll say that in Heroes versus Villains, she had less confessionals with 23, averaging only 2 an episode. So
3 confessionals an episode would never happen anymore.
Crazy.
So take a shot. How many did Parvati have? Amanda had 33.
She must have had like 43.
I was going to say 42.
32.
What?
She had 1 less than Amanda.
So did Suri just have like 60?
Suri had 52. So Parvati had literally 22 going to the finale, and she got 10 in the last episode.
Mm-hmm. Different edited show. That's the thing. Like, it was just different edited show. Nowadays, it started to finally get to that point where there weren't as many confessionals and things like that. And you had big personalities like James and Penner and people who went out really early. It was just different edited show. And also, like, the fans tribe, they were nuts. So there was a lot to talk, because it was actually a good tribe, and Joel and Tracy and Chet, all of that. There was a lot of people to actually give screen time to. So I'm not surprised. Did Eric have a lot, though? That is one question I do have, because I know Natalie Bolton pretty much had nothing.
I was gonna say, how many do you think Natalie Bolton?
She was under 20.
15.
She had 17.
Yeah.
And Eric got 39. Eric actually averaged the most amount of confessionals this season per episode with 3.
Which is so fascinating, because then he comes back for Caramona and is considered.
And we kind of skipped over it, but China has, I think so far, the least amount of confessionals just total with 371. This season has 375. And to go back to the season with the most, Borneo, we started Survivor with 657 in a season.
Crazy.
We're now down to 375.
Yeah. So you're going to have numbers just dwindle. Yeah. So crazy.
Yeah.
So crazy. Well, I think that pretty much covers it, right? I think we covered these 4 winners. We're at the 2-hour mark, of course, because that's what we do here. Wes, you have anything else you want to add, or you just want to plug yourself one last time?
You know what? Next week we have Bob Crowley, we have JT Thomas, we have Natalie White, and we have Sandra Diaz Twine. I almost feel like
what a group.
And Heroes vs. Villains could be its own week. But then I was like, but can we really talk about Gabon and Tocantins for 2 hours? Probably not. So I'm not going to propose that idea. But I do feel like maybe people be prepared. Next week might be a little bit longer, 2 hours. So I feel like there's a lot to unpack with Samoa and Heroes vs. Villains, depending on what Phil allows, of course. But yeah, no, I'm definitely looking forward to next week because Tocantins is top 2 season for me, either tied, depending on how I wake up in the morning, with David versus Goliath. Just depends what I feel like that day. David versus Goliath, Tocantins are my 2 favorite seasons. So I'm really looking forward to talking about it. And Gabon, of course, is the hot mess that everybody loves.
Yep.
So.
I was going to say, this is our WTF. There's Survivor NSFW. We are now Survivor WTF for the next episode.
The next 4 are just like 4 total randos.
I will say, anyone who's watched the Rob Sesternino story, it's on my channel. Next week, I'm doing why Rob Sesternino lost and how he could have won. It's something I've never tried before, but it's like a thought experiment. Like, in an alternate timeline, if Rob Sesternino made these tweaks, we're not overhauling his game. Just if he had tweaked his game, could he have won, and how would that have played out? So we'll see how that goes. People might rip me for but we'll see.
You're putting something on the internet, you're going to get ripped by somebody.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a fun one because it's like, if we made these tweaks, could you also see how Rob would have won doing these things? So we'll see.
Well, there you go, everybody. Look forward to that. Alexa, I know we're not really taking it home, but take us home.
Yeah. So as Wes said, check out his channel at Once Upon an Island on all social media as well. I'm whispering because I'm next to my parents' room, and my mom texted me telling me I had to be quiet. So
welcome to being in high school again.
Welcome to, I just turned 27, live with my parents, and I'm feeling alive. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find us every single Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, right here. Next week, we are talking about Bob Crowley, JT Thomas, Natalie White, and Sarah. Very, very weird group of 4. As we said, this was probably our best group of 4, but we're really excited to keep this going. We have something really exciting going on next week, but we are not going to talk about it yet. So make sure to tune in on Twitter, and we'll tweet about it in the next few days.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.